I remember waking up many, many times at York University, laid out on a desk in one of the offices that I had while I was there. I used to be president of the English Undergraduate Student Association, so I had an office while I was an undergrad, and I would wake up laid out on the desk with books everywhere, and this was pure happiness. To study until the end of all time, until you couldn't open your eyelids anymore and fall asleep, and then wake up and study some more. Pure bliss. And so when it comes to how to study effectively for long hours, I have done this for many, many years. And it's something that's often frowned upon. People say, well, you have to take breaks and you can't extend it for too long and all that sort of stuff. And there's truth to that, of course. But I just love studying for long hours, and I got a lot to say on the topic. So if you're joining us now, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Adonis is here, says, sounds like fun. Good to see you, Adonis. If you're joining us, get involved because, like I said, from early on when I was an undergrad, I had an office and I used to sleep in it, and I used to stay until the library closed, and then I would take piles and piles and piles and piles of books to my office, and I would read and I would study and I would read and study some more. And then when I became a grad student, I had offices again. Now, I often did some things that weren't so wise in those offices, such as drinking my face off, and I often woke up with hangovers. That's not the point. The point is that I studied long and long hours, and I had strategies and techniques in order to get the most out of it. First off, I want to thank our supporters, people who became channel members. INC, JSP, George Lauder, Chrono and Walking, thank you for that. If you want to support this work, then you can become a channel member for extra prizes and so on. But today, what we're going to talk about is how do you do this without this stressful look on your face? How do you get all of these books into your head without that stress? This is obviously a bit of a theatrical photograph, but this was one of the offices that I had. And it's a beautiful memory palace. And, you know, I was able to lock the door so I could take from the library all the books that I wanted. And there was, you can't quite see it right here, but there was a little shelf right there. And I would have all the books that I wanted on that shelf. And I would pour through them for hours. And I would sleep on the floor. I would sleep strangely over my desk, whatever it took to get this stuff done. And, you know, how do you do it in a way that's actually going to get you your goals, healthy and so forth? And I got a lot of adventures where I didn't do it in healthy ways. So I'm giving you the best of hindsight, but also the reality is that even when I wasn't healthy, I had strategy, I had mindset, I had some considerations of my body that I learned over the years, and I knew a lot about environment. And all these things together are going to help you know not only how to study effectively for long hours, but to actually implement and to do better than I did, which is always the goal, right? The student should outpace the teacher. So please join us, hit the thumbs up, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how are you with your study techniques now? David is in the house. Good to see you, David. He says, I was just studying when your live stream started. Well, thank you for allowing us to get into that. What are you studying? Is it Arabic or something else? In any case, we're going to go through each of these categories: strategy, mindset, the body, and the environment. And here's the thing. All of these things tie together. So you want the whole picture in your mind. You want to understand how that environment, for example, ties into your strategy. Because we are devoted to the art, the craft, and the science of the memory palace, right? And so everything we do environmentally has to do with strategy. We use the memory palace, which has to do with our mind. So everything has to do with mindset. And of course, where is our mind? It's in our brains, or it's produced by our brains, which means that the body is, you know, the ne plus ultra of what it is that we need to focus on and how we need to focus on it in order to get the best results out of all these other things. So with all that said, I want to thank everybody who has been so wonderful in the discussion on our recent Art of Memory video. I was telling people about it on the community tab, and if you haven't seen it yet, please make sure you go and you get involved in that conversation, because there's some compelling things that are going on there in that conversation. And I've been very, very interested in how that it's playing out. And if you've ever, tried to penetrate this big, massive, thick, monstrous art of memory, and you've been struggling, you're going to want to follow this series. And so we're doing it for you. So let me know. Make sure that you watch it. The link there is up on the screen for you. Not sure if that's showing up on our other places, so I'll pop it into the other place thingamajigger there. And please engage in it. Let me know your thoughts in the discussion. Read some of the discussion posts there, because there's interesting things. Mistakes is a big theme in the art of memory, and it's a big theme already in the video. So thanks to Giordano for helping engage there. And then, there's at least one individual who's a little bit reactionary about certain statements made there. But other than that, we can correct them if people come with the correct attitude and don't have their ego all over it. So check that out if you haven't already. Also, the street team for the release of the new book, this is now officially over. So if you missed the street team stuff, sorry about that. But now this same link, magneticmemorymethod.com/VM, goes to the pre-order page for the Kindle of The Victorious Mind. And so it's been wonderful seeing people pre-order it. And if you get it and you send me your receipt, I am going to send you a free additional course later this week, next week, for those of you who are in Sunday land. And that is going to be called How to Stop Thinking. And it's a study guide to this book. So it gives you something to do while you're waiting for the book to be released. Thanks to everybody who's been supporting the pre-launch. I better stick it in that one, actually. And I really appreciate that. It's a book with the subtitle, How to Master Memory, Meditation, and Mental Well-Being. And this is exactly what it's going to do for you, is help you master it. And mastery really is not an end. It is a process. It is a journey. And so that's what I hope to communicate. And I hope that I'm effective in communicating it. And I hope everybody will be prepared to have that. There are physical versions coming. The audiobook is in review right now. So if you're an audio person, there will be an audiobook. But a lot of people have told me, look, we just ordered the Kindle for you to support what you're doing. And I really, really appreciate that. So, ideally, in a perfect world, everybody has all versions. And by the way, I have multiple versions of this. I'm thinking of how that I could potentially get the rights to make an audio version. I haven't been able to find one. Maybe there is already an audio version. But wouldn't that be cool if, and just understand this, everything I'm doing is trying to generate ways to make more things possible for the memory tradition. So imagine I could buy the rights to make the audiobook of The Art of Memory. That would be pretty cool. And if you are getting the things from the Magnetic Memory Method world, you are directly contributing to making that possible. Chrome Woman Walking is in the house. Excellent. Thanks for being here. You pre-ordered. Thank you so much for that. You can just go to magneticmemorymethod.com/VM. Soon, those of you who have sent me a receipt for your pre-order of the Kindle, I will be sending you the first installment of the course, How to Stop Thinking, that goes along with The Victorious Mind. All right, so now let's get into how to study effectively for long hours, as I just love to do. And I really do genuinely love it even to this day. It's one of the most important things that you can do, really, is learn how to sustain long-term study over a lifetime so that you can get just deep into topics and really, really understand them, really know them with greater depth than you even imagined possible, and then be modest about it, because when you make mistakes, you have self-correcting mechanisms and you don't get your ego all in a bunch about it, and you just figure out what's the best thing to do. You make decisions based on some discernment, right? That's just basically what you do. So a simple thing that you can do is just schedule. A great way to study effectively and be able to do it for long hours is to schedule those hours. So a simple thing to do is just make a spreadsheet with a study schedule on it and put the date, put the topic, put the book, and then list your memory palace that you're going to use, right? And plan it out. Yo Mama 847 is in the house. Good to see you. What's up? Well, what's up with you? I really appreciate you being here. If you're joining us, say hello. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, and what you're thinking. You know the drill. Now, let me get a drink here. Many apologies. I gotta take lots of drinks to do these live streams. But the whole idea here is scheduling. Now, this takes a little bit of thinking. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of effort. But so does kissing and chocolate. Eating chocolate takes effort. And so if you do it, you get the benefit, right? And so many people, they put so much time and energy into, alcohol, for example. Where are we going to get some alcohol? Where are we going to get or do we have a wine opener? There's like all kinds of time and energy that goes into pleasure that you could just do all of that strategic thinking for how you're going to study effectively more. It's just a simple spreadsheet, right? Now you can build out spreadsheets in different ways and so on, but one of the best things to do is have a schedule and put the time that you're going to do it. So I just mocked up a little thing here, but you could actually have hours. Now, I don't necessarily do the hours that way, but one thing I like to do, and it's very powerful, is in a journal, actually write down the start time and the end time. So when I was a student, what I used to do is I would say, let's say I'm studying art of memory. I would write down 9:15 AOM, and then I would just put a line. And then when I stopped, I would put the stop time. Now, this was very beautiful because instead of having that feeling at the end of the day, where did all my time go? You just have this record. You see where your time went. And this is super, super powerful because it's fulfilling. And without punishing yourself, you can say, well, I didn't track my time, so I don't remember where it went, but I'm going to do better next time. And you just make it a habit. How do you make it a habit? I suggest you do it for 90 days. Invest in a proper physical journal. Something you can hear, something you can see, something you can feel. Because as good as a spreadsheet is, it's not real in the same sense, right? And it's just very simple. So you have a nice digital record there of your books that you're reading and so forth, but you also have a physical thing where you're journaling it, and that's going to come in handy later. And just start time, end time. So it's not only scheduling when you're going to do something, but tracking the schedule of how you did it. This is so powerful. And again, it's partly easing your mind. Where did all the time go? Oh, that's where it went. This has been huge. And I don't do it that much anymore, but I did it so long that I just trained myself to be thinking that way and tracking. And I just highly, highly recommend it. So give that a try. Part of strategy too is what you do when you read. So if you missed out on our note-taking video, please make sure that you watch that because you're going to find that it's very, very useful to have a note-taking strategy. Will you find the perfect note-taking strategy in this video? I don't know, but it's on the channel, and I think if you check it out, you will find that it is very, very useful for you. So check that out. Make sure that you grab that. And obviously, we're pretty partial to the Memory Palace, but not because, we're deranged, but because it's the most effective learning tool in the world. So part of the strategy is making sure you know what memory palaces are, you actually create them, and you do so not just in a namby-pamby way, but you do it in a network. You have some sort of daily practice drills, and you do full use, not just sort of using the memory palace, but the actual memory palace from top to bottom, which means that it's well structured. It means that you have proper, full, robust magnetic imagery, and it makes sure that you're using recall rehearsal in each and every way. If you need the free memory improvement kit that shows you how, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT immediately. If you're just joining us and you're new here, get subscribed, hit those notification bells and icons so you are notified when new videos come out, and hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and the Memory Palace is the number one strategy, really, but it too needs to be scheduled. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, but I don't have the time, well, you could just use that same sort of structure. Writing down 9:15, Memory Palace creation. Oh, the course tells me I have to follow these certain steps. I'll follow them, and then I followed them, and then you get it done. It's so incredible how much you can get done if you just put the clock on and you track it and you measure it and you actually focus on these particular things. So the Memory Palace technique and its strategy is always going to evade people who just won't sit down and time it. It's just a timing thing. It's a scheduling thing. And if you're not going to do that, well then just accept that you're not going to do it, and don't blame the rest of the world, and come back to it when you're ready, because it's an amazing, wonderful thing. Dave Lavi is in the house from Montreal. Bonjour, comment ça va? It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. The other thing too, right, is just to learn that there's more than the Memory Palace. There are multiple memory strategies. So we've got all kinds of memory strategies for you. And so there was a previous video that we created together, all of us, and there were 11 actionable ways to remember more. And that is there for you right there if you want to go and plug that into your system. Very, very useful strategies for you. Also, one of the things too, in addition to knowing that there are multiple strategies, making sure that you know what all the strategies are so you can start to practice them, is having some sort of priming. So on how to memorize textbooks, we've got a lot of those things for you. So you want to make sure that you go through that, and we're not going to dwell on it too much here, but part of what I'm teaching you in that training is priming. And priming is one of the biggest and most powerful ways to study effectively. And I primed this book. I even primed this book. Even though it's for kids, I prime it anyway, right? And it's very, very important. So if you want to know more about that, you want to check that out. I want to get into more studying effectively for long hours as a dedicated topic, but these things are part of it. So make sure you follow up on those things. Another part of your strategy needs to be the big five. What's the big five? Reading, writing, speaking, listening, and memory. Do it so that it goes into memory and out of memory. So reading is pretty obvious. When you're studying, you're almost certainly reading at some level, right? But what about the speaking and the listening and the writing part? Well, there's lots of ways to do it. Let's talk about the writing part. Summaries. So one of the things that you can do to really make sure that you're studying effectively is write little summaries of what it is that you're doing. 200 words, 100 words, anything. Just get it out of your head. Why does this work? Well, partly it helps you test that you actually understood what you're reading there. Helps you engage with it at a different level. This is called levels of processing effect. Craik and Lockhart, 1972. Look it up. It's very, very powerful. Nobody's fantasizing here. This is done because it's scientific. And writing summaries is one of the best things that you can do. Also, it helps you with self-testing, because not only do you sometimes in your summaries have the opportunity to figure out where there are weaknesses, but you can also think about how you might solve those weaknesses. So you might come across something like we have now together, the opportunity to figure out, well, there seems to be a misunderstanding around quintillion here, so how are we going to solve it? And then we think through the Feynman technique and we write out some ideas about how we might solve it. So thanks to Geert Jan for participating in that on our recent video all about the ways that we can use the Feynman technique essentially as a community. Vinny Love is in the house mentioning mind maps. Yes, and we're going to talk about mind mapping in a little while because it's a very powerful technique for studying effectively, doing summaries, self-testing, etc. Now, another thing that we don't talk about enough is drawing, right? And there's a number of ways that we can draw, which is to the point that Vinny Love is raising now. Diagrams, illustrations, and mind maps. So diagrammatic thinking, I'll tell you, in my life, I look at charts and graphs, and I've always been, oh my goodness, I can't really follow this. I can't track this. But what I decided to do is get over that. And one of the things that I've done is just redraw diagrams to try and figure out what they're telling me. Instead of rejecting it, instead of saying, oh, I can't understand, diving in and reproducing. And this is part of levels of processing effect. And you can take notes while you're doing it, and then you start to understand. And now I look at them quite differently, and I understand charts and graphs a lot better because I integrated with them. I assembled with them. Instead of pushing it away with language that says, I don't, I can't, I started to think and imagine, what if I could and what if I can? So that way. Same thing with illustrations. This is something that's really important, because memory techniques, as wonderful as they are, sometimes you might have the flu, you might be busy or whatever. I don't know. You might just not be in the mood for memory techniques. You might not want to create magnetic imagery. So how do you get yourself to do it? Well, I like to just make illustrations. So this is a way of just doing it from another angle. And this is a nice little illustration that I drew. And it's not like I just did one once in a while. Just make other illustrations. So there's no reason to stop. I dug this out for you guys to show you this old thing. I'm surprised I even kept it, of how that when I wasn't feeling up to speed, depressed, hungover, whatever the case was, just tons of them. I still worked on my German, and I didn't really feel like doing it solo, creating the magnetic imagery. So just drew. And it's very, very powerful. It's powerful for a number of reasons. And it doesn't have to be for language learning. It can be for anything. Anything you don't understand or anything that you want to commit to memory, you can just do some simple illustrations. And it's very powerful. I'm not an artist whatsoever. This isn't about artistry. It's just about illustrating things to help get it into the mind so you can move forward. I've done this for years and years and years, and it's very, very wonderful. I've done it during lectures, just to get things into the memory. And mind mapping is a little bit different. Mind mapping is not so much illustrating, although it can be. It's about placing things in space and teasing them out. It's about generating new ideas. And if you're going to use it for memory, then one of the things you can do, let's pretend that we have a mind map here. This is a tip from Phil Chambers, is, you've got your, complicated. You've got your mind map, and you could use Roman numerals in the corner to track how many times that you've reviewed it. So that's a pretty powerful way to use mind maps for studying effectively. And it also gives you a way of taking breaks that we'll talk about in a minute. But there's ways to take breaks that don't really take breaks if you're kind of a person like me who doesn't like to take breaks. So you can walk. Walking is great because while you're walking, you can reflect on what you're studying. So your mind can keep going, and it's diffuse thinking. It's all the little things. Rest is a great book that you should check out. Alex Payne here. It's got great ideas about walking, and you can also do things like stretching, which I highly recommend. And then you can also just alternate skills. So this is one of my favorite things to do, is to alternate skills. And this is also something that is scientifically confirmed in rest. And basically the idea is if you're studying and you're reading and you're reading and you're reading and you're reading and you're reading, one of the things that you can do to take some rest, to take a break, is just to read something else. So you don't have to stop reading, but you can read something else. And you'll find, I certainly find anyway, that while I'm reading other things, my brain starts to make connections. Those connections are formative to remembering more and to understanding deeper. So you're alternating skills by using the same skill for a different purpose. That's one way. And then the other thing you can do is alternate skills in terms of just doing something entirely different, right? So that's a very, very powerful strategy. The thing to understand is that you want to focus, but you want to do so in a way that is getting the best of what's called cognitive shifting. And this is not task switching, it's not multitasking, but it's cognitive shifting. And the more you train yourself to be able to cognitive shift, so to speak, the longer you can study effectively for those long hours that so many people are desirous of studying. And me too. So this is one thing to think about. And what's so beautiful about what's talked about in rest is that you can actually do cognitive shifting in a way that promotes rest. It's beautiful. So read that book if you haven't. Now, the thing about strategy and strategization is you need to schedule your walks if you want to make sure that you get them. Yes, there's all kinds of apps and so forth that can ding-a-ling-ling at certain intervals to take you or to remind you to go out and walk, but are you really going to obey them? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But what you're more likely to obey is things that are deep in your procedural memory. And procedural memory is that thing where you just do things. It's like that crazy desire that I have right now to go to the gym because I'm so trained to go to the gym. And I'm going to. It's beautiful, but it's so deep in the procedural memory that you're almost addicted to it. And you want to get that way with breaks as well, so that you just on autopilot do it. And yeah, maybe a little ding-a-ling-ling app can help, but I think that's not nearly as good as just training yourself to, at regular intervals, take breaks. All right. Now, the other thing that's really, really important is that you practice strategization. So one of the things that's really important to understand is that planning is often more important and powerful than the plans themselves. So I spend a lot of time planning, replanning. Things never work out as they seem like they might. They never work out as you plan for, but that doesn't mean the planning isn't important. Planning is very, very important. So practice strategization, practice scheduling, practice all the things that we've already talked to about this so far, and get it into your system. Get the practice of strategization into your system, which essentially means planning, learning how to plan by planning to plan, right? And then planning to practice and practicing, planning, etc. It's all a perfect circle. Jonathan Ward is in the house from South Carolina. Good to see you. Ellsworth Darling is here. Excellent, excellent. He says, I really need this. Good. Well, we're here to serve. If you have any questions, this is your chance, by the way, to pop in any questions, comments, things you want to say, and let's get them answered. Chanel is in the house. Good to see you, Chanel. It's been a while. You say, are the use more of a tactile approach to my learning large amounts of information at one time along with audio since my visual acuity is not as strong? It seems to help me with learning at large shirts. I'm not sure what you mean there, but when I can touch the object with my hand and related to the word, which I'm learning, a good bit of information for what I'm learning, I'm able to visualize it in my head, since small pictures are difficult for me to see with my left eye. The bigger the object is, the easier it is for me to see with my left eye. The smaller it is, the more difficult it is. So this is the technique that I use in order to assimilate more information into my mind quickly. Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, one thing I really admire about that is you're just experimenting, finding things, and you're aware. We're going to talk about body in a bit, and you're body aware. You've got this situation, you're doing it anyway. You're figuring it out, right? So there's really no excuses, and anybody can find strategies. And this comes back to practice strategization. Practice the actual practice of making your strategy. Plan, and plan some more. My mouth has been really dry lately. Sorry about that. All right. So another way that you can do this, and this is really important, is have a steady diet of learning how to learn. So compliments to all of you who are here now, because what we do on this channel is helping ourselves learn how to learn, right? And so this is a buzz phrase from the great Barbara Oakley and Peter Sainowski, learning how to learn. This is a very, very good thing, but it's not just about this or that book. It's about having a steady diet of it. It's meta-learning in some way, but constantly exposing yourself to the skill of learning, the study of learning itself. In another book, Barbara Oakley uses this phrase, learnier. You know, you can be learnier, which is a beautiful way of putting it. But how do you do it? Well, you have to schedule into your life some sort of time to practice strategization. Very, very important. And mind mapping can help you figure out how you're going to do that. Just journaling can help you figure out how you're going to do that. Who can do it? You can. Nobody else can do it. So you got to show up and you got to figure out how you're going to do that. And we'll have some ideas for you coming up about how to do that if you're a stubborn old mule. I've been a stubborn old mule in my day, and there's ways to make change. So one of the things that I would urge you to do is get a pen and pencil and start writing down notes if you aren't already, or a piece of paper, and strategize the upcoming categories, because I've got 3 more categories I'm going to take you through on this live stream. And you will need to strategize when and how you're going to do each and every one of them so that you can study effectively for long hours. So we started with some heavy hitting strategy, and we're going to carry on. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you're new here, subscribe to this channel. Get involved in the magnetic memory method world, and I'm sure you will be glad that you did. Ellsworth says, the mind map, he can't seem to get it down pat. can't seem to remember anything. He's a law student struggling with motivation because he's afraid of failure. I will subscribe to this channel. Well, Elizabeth, thanks for being so honest about your situation. It's that's where change starts. Acknowledging that there's a problem, acknowledging that there's fear, and all you got to do, right, is you got to make a commitment that you're going to face this thing and you're going to conquer it. And one thing that I would suggest for you, I don't know if you can do it down there in the Bahamas, but you can start to consider how you can develop what I sometimes have started thinking of as the victorious mind. And let me just test this, but this little linky link should get you over there so that you have it as soon as you possibly can get it. My keyboard is going crazy all of a sudden, which is never good. Yeah, that's weird. Bad timing. Anyway, let me get you that link later. But you got to consider, how are you going to say yes to this, and then create a plan for yourself to change. So if the mind map, if you can't seem to get it down pat, then one thing you can do is learn the Feynman technique and start writing down, what is it that I'm doing? Describe what you're doing, good 200 words. Look for clues in how that you could improve it, and then get down to improving it, ideally with a trusted guide. Mind Map Mastery by Tony Buzan, a masterpiece. Check it out. You might also want to get this book, Learning How to Learn. You might want to go through the free course at magneticmarymethod.com/YT, and you might want to get that pre-order of the Victorious Mind, which I'm putting up on the screen there for you. You can get that for yourself and be ready to start developing more mental strength, mental toughness that will help you a great deal. Johnny 5 Alive says, surprised myself and my family by memorizing all 45 presidents backwards and forward using the Memory Palace method. You were the original inspiration. Thank you. Well, thank you, Johnny 5 Alive, for letting me know. Thank you for taking action with the techniques. And thanks for letting us know that that's what you've done with them. This is just the beginning. Please keep using them because it just gets better and better and better. Sometimes people, they get a little spark, a little test of what's going on, and then they kind of go, oh, that was neat, and then they never continue. But I can tell you, you keep going. When you get to my situation where you're 2 decades into it, it just keeps getting better and better and better. And why? Well, we know why. It's building up cognitive reserve, it's sometimes called. And this fortifies your brain for the long term. And the more that you practice, the more you're building these neuronal connections in your brain. So you've got the presidents, maybe you go back and add their dates. Now you're getting some number information in there, which uses a slightly different aspect of the brain and the techniques. And then before you know it, you're going to be able to add other things because now you've got a number system. Speaking of number systems, Christian Fitzharris is in the house. What's up, fam? What's up, Christian? Good to see you. Yesterday, I watched a live stream where Christian was reciting a bunch of pi, and that was super impressive and very entertaining. And not only entertaining, but educating, because he taught the background techniques behind how he did it. And I was very, very delighted about that. So thank you, Christian, for being here today and for being a guiding light and voice and individual who helps teach the great memory tradition. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to have you with us today. Man, the computer is going crazy today, and I don't know why it's showing these bizarre error messages, but I apologize for any delays, and also I got to keep drinking. All right. Ellsworth asks, what is the best way to study so much law information with the Memory Palace? Great question, Ellsworth. Let's dive into that right now. Number one, make sure that it's not the Memory Palace. Number one mistake, people think of it as a singular. You need a Memory Palace network. Ideally, that network is built from somebody who is teaching you both Ars Memorativa and Ars Combinatoria. I would be one of those people. And this is very, very important. You've got to have a network, not one Memory Palace, but a number of them. You also need to understand the deep, deep connection. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend that you watch part 1 of my walkthrough of the Art of Memory, which is on this channel. And it'll help you get, and it's admittedly conceptual, but it'll help you get a deeper understanding of what's going on in terms of how to use these techniques. But you also really need to use the techniques. So it's very, very important, because a lot of people, they think that they're using the techniques, but they're actually not using the techniques. So I would deeply encourage you to make sure that you're actually using the actual techniques. And as you ensure this, I'm going to post the link to this Art of Memory Part 1 video for you. Make sure you know what you're getting into. And here, let me just sort of unpack what's going on in that first video, because again, it is a bit conceptual. You're learning to understand that all information exists in space. The memory palace, and why you need networks, is because if you try to cram in all this information into one memory palace, it's just not honoring space. It's not honoring anything that's even remotely scientific about the chemical nature of the brain. So in that video, I cite some of the sources that you could go and look at for the memory science behind the spatial nature of the brain and spatial memory and all that sort of stuff. We don't dwell on it. We don't bog down the memory science. But rest assured that the things that I'm saying, to the best of my ability, and yes, I will make mistakes and I'm not a neuroscientist, but to the best of my ability, I practice personally based on the science, and I practice based on just the realities of the techniques as they were used by people who needed to memorize massive amounts of information and remember it for the long term. So this is not memory competition approach, but it's long-term knowledge approach. So that's very important. And so what you're doing there is you're understanding that everything exists in space, and you're understanding a sort of computational nature of language and communication. So how do we communicate? Well, we communicate in language. Well, what is language? Well, language is sounds, right? It's called echoic memory. And what is the way that we communicate sounds back and forth? Well, we write them down. We encode them in words, and our brains perceive those words, which taps into what's called iconic memory. Now, the extent to which I can speak authoritatively about all these things, take it with a grain of salt. But that seems to me what is going on in the memory science sort of thing. And it's important to draw out this distinction, because when we look at the ancient tradition and we're like, why did these guys do it this way? It's because they somehow figured out exactly what we now know in the memory science, which is that chemical encoding in memory is spatial, and letters are in space, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they're all in space, right? And so when we start to use our memory palaces, when we have enough memory palaces, and we have this connection to the alphabet and to numerical signatures like 1 to 10 and symbols like ampersands and so on, then we're able to weave them together with space. And very practically, everything that I've memorized is just that, right? Having a memory palace and then looking. I was speaking with John Graham this morning. We're probably going to do a channel collab. And we're already collaborating on the channel collab that we're doing. So we're not probably going to do it. It's already in motion. I'm very excited about it. And I was just riffing on him. And I was like, the problem is that so many people don't understand the gematria. Gematria is the idea that the alphabet is the central sort of source of human communication, connection to each other. They would call it connection to God, but since there's no evidence for God, it's to each other, right? That's how we communicate to each other. Why did they think there was so much power in it? Because that's how that's how things happen. So it's very, very important to understand this. Once you get that done, you realize that all your memory palaces can be built out of the alphabet, right? And not only can all your memory palaces be built out of the alphabet, they can be fused with numbers. So every station in a memory palace can be both a letter and a number, as you please. Every image that you create can be built out of the alphabet. In fact, it will be built out of the alphabet whether you're aware of it or not, whether you like it or not. Some people are like, well, I don't like that technique. Your brain doesn't care. Your brain doesn't care about your likes and your dislikes. It's just how it works. And I've never seen any evidence to the contrary. And this is very, very important. So I know that all is heavy lifting sometimes, and I'm not necessarily the best to explain it, but in a scripted video, which I shared the link for you there, I think you'll get it. But you want to take the course, and that's one of the points of the video, because Frances Yates in The Art of Memory, she keeps saying how baffled she is by all these techniques, how confusing they are. Well, of course they were. She didn't use them. You would never be confused by this if you would just dive in and use them. All right. So I hope that gives you something to go with And then you need to practice them and you need to use them thoroughly, which means also recall rehearsal, which we talk about in that free course at magneticmemory-method.com. All right, so James is in the house. Says, hello again, Anthony. Early here in India. I visited one of the memory palaces in person yesterday. It was nice to see it again in a while. Excellent, excellent. Glad that you are visiting your memory palaces in person. I do that whenever I can. All right. Johnny Five Alive says Microsoft updates. Maybe. Bleaksand is in the house. Desmond from Washington State. Working through your course. Just created an A to Z palace. Now I can effortlessly say ABCs forwards and backwards. Thanks. Great, Bleaksand. So there you go, Ellsworth. He's taken action. Desmond, over there in Washington State. You can too. And just as an example of how all this works. So Bleaksand says his name is Desmond. He's in Washington State, right? So if I had a memory palace in front of me, I would just think Desi Arnaz and probably leave it at that, because I'm not sure if Desi Arnaz, his full name is Desmond or not, but I might not need an M-O-N-D to remind me of Desmond. I'd probably just get that, right? But if I did, and I was worried about it, in the memory palace, I would have a mountain, because Mond and mountain sort of reminds me of that. And then Washington State, well, I haven't been there for a while, but the last that I remember, there's a lot of mountains in Washington State. Isn't Mount Rainier there? I seem to remember seeing it from my hometown in Vancouver. I'm not sure, though. My memory is sometimes flawed for geographical purposes. All right, so that's just a quick example for you how that all works. You're just using the alphabet. You're zeroing in, you're focusing in on the alphabet and finding connections at a echoic level is one of the words they use in the memory science, the sound level. But you're using the alphabet to trigger sounds, and you use sounds to trigger the alphabet. It's a perfect circle. And then when you have your memory palaces, boom, what's my D palace? Bam, that's where Desmond is going, right? So it's just as simple as that. And again, that's in the course of the site. All right, Ellsworth, you had a memory, a memory. It's going to be a memory in a second here. You had a message held for review. If you need help, get registered for that free course and ask any questions that you've got here. But we'll not be showing that message. But thank you for posting it. Christian says, I've used Gematria since 1993. Sounds cool. It is. It's a great word. Obviously, I'm not telling the whole story of the Gematria. Some people might relate it to the Logos. I certainly think there's an argument to be made there. It's related to a lot of things. It all comes down to your practice, your devotion to the craft. And please be devoted to this, because it's how you're going to learn it faster, and it's how you're going to make great changes in your life. All right, so if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you're new here, get subscribed to this channel, bell icon and all that stuff so you're notified, and don't miss a thing, because we got a lot coming up for you. All right, so now mindset. We got to talk about this, because a lot of people think that their mindset has to do with their mind, their ego. It doesn't have to do with you. You don't exist. Get over it. Stop thinking that you actually exist. If you can find yourself, woohoo, you're going to win the prize, because nobody has found themselves yet, right? You already are what you are seeking. You already are self itself, so to speak. But that doesn't mean we don't have challenges in life. It doesn't mean that we don't get frustrated and so forth. So how do we deal with this? Well, here's the thing. That thing that you are has an existing level of competence. It's just the way it is. You don't get to change it. Nobody gets to change it. I don't get to change it. Believe me, I wish I had a lot more competence in a lot more areas in my life, but I don't, right? So instead of getting frustrated, what I have to do is I have to think, all right, well, where am I now? Maybe use some of those tips we already covered about summarizing things, write out the summary, do a little bit of Feynman technique and say, well, I want to get over here. How am I going to do that? Well, I've got to figure out where I am here now and then make a plan, a strategy. But I got to do it in a way that I'm challenged so that I grow. So it's not just easy. I'm not just doing the same thing again because I'm on autopilot default, but something that I actually can do to go in the direction that I want to go in order to improve. So challenge. But then don't get frustrated so that it's too hard and then the little sob story starts, oh, poor me, right? That's not going to help anything. You've got to then scale it back from that because it'll happen. Anybody who has a brain has an insular cortex that triggers pain responses when there's a lot of work to do. So you've got to know that about yourself. Now, if you're locked in your ego, you might go, well, I should be able to do better, right? I should be able to say enough words in my head to make this happen. Well, probably not. You can't hypnotize yourself into doing all these things. I've tried, believe me, I've tried to use hypnosis to overcome my lack of competence. It doesn't work. And why doesn't it work? Because if you don't have the competence, you're not going to be able to do it. It's just like, you can hypnotize yourself to fly like a bird. If you don't have wings, you're not going to fly. Birds aren't going to fly even if they do have wings, if they somehow don't go through the training sequence, right? It's just simple. But so many people that, the wonderful thing if I just get the right hypnotist, or the law of attraction. Yeah, if I just, no. I mean, it's not that it's totally lacking in value, but really you got to follow the law of action, and the law of action needs to be premised on competence that you actually have, right? And done in such a way that you don't frustrate yourself, but done in such a way that you're not just repeating the same old stuff so that you get bored because it's too easy. Simple, right? So simple, they used to call it common sense until they found out that common sense didn't quite work. So now we got to call it something else. Got to come up with some fancy new words. James says, Anthony, when making memory palaces from buildings and rooms, making non-crossing paths isn't much of a problem. How do you suggest this can be done with road routes? Great question, James. This is actually covered in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. And basically, one of the things that you want to consider is, what is the route? What is the road? And how can you design it in such a way that just simply follows those principles? And then how can you just take a little part of the road to practice, to figure that out? So I'm not sure what you mean by road routes, but if you listen to the podcast that we did last week and you'll hear a testimonial from somebody there who did an amazing thing where he memorized all the exits, and you can go listen to that. And I think you'll find that very, very compelling as a way to start to practice. So it's just there in the form of a testimonial. So go and listen to that episode if you're interested, and then check it out in one of the demonstration courses in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, where I take you out on the street and show you the use of streets. But I don't know if street is road in your mind. So roads, that's there's a little training there just in a testimonial on the most recent, as of now, Magnetic Memory Method podcast. And you say you find avoiding path crossing limits the number of routes that you can use. Well, first of all, sometimes those limits are good. Accept them, embrace them. And then you can think, all right, I've done my dues, I've paid, I've earned my stripes, and I can now use memory palaces following that principle. Can I cross some paths here and there? See what happens. Genshi Genbutsu. Go and see what happens. Sounds like you're sophisticated and you can make it happen. So I hope that helps you out. And let me see if I can use my keyboard again. It wasn't working there, but I can maybe find you the link to that episode. And if I can, I will share it with you because I think you would benefit a great deal. I hope I'm remembering things correctly as well. But if you check it out and you're over there, please share it around because it's an important episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. So thank you for that, and I hope that gives you some guidance. All right, so mindset. It's not really about your mind. It's about your existing competence, and it's about your willingness to strategize, as we've already talked about in the previous section today. So if you missed that, check out the replay. And then when your mind comes up with all this junk, this garbage, it's too hard, I'm too tired, all that stuff, what are you going to do? Well, I recommend self-inquiry. We went ahead here. Self-inquiry. So what is self-inquiry? Well, it is basically inquiring into the nature of the self. So let's say that you're like, oh, poor me, it's too hard, etc. You could just simply ask, who is it that's saying this? Where is that person? And then you look around and you can't find the person. And so then it starts to dissolve. You can also ask things like, is this thought useful? And then that could start to make it dissolve. You can ask yourself, how does this thought behave? And then you start to notice how it behaves. What is its origin? Well, maybe you're just tired. Maybe you need to get a drink. There's a lot of things that you can do with self-inquiry that just make the noise go down, turns the volume down on all that noise. It's very, very useful. And so I highly recommend learning it. You can search up self-inquiry. There's a lot to it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of junk around it. I wrote a whole book, really, that helps clear that out, give you a more secular view. And it's called The Victorious Mind, and it's very, very important. So that's available for you now. And if you click that linky link and pre-order it, I have a free course for you called How to Stop Thinking. And you can actually stop thinking. I never believed that it was possible, but I went on a long odyssey to figure out how to do it. And so I did. And it's pretty amazing. It feels great to just be able to stop thinking on demand. Wow. So for those who pre-order this book, send me your receipt and I will get it to you. All right. So, and I'm hoping that that link is actually correct, but it is wonderful. And I really, really want to get this free additional course to as many people as possible. So make sure I see your receipt and then I'll link you up when it's ready. And that book is called The Victorious Mind. All right. So part of having a victorious mind is when you're bored and you don't want to do stuff. Well, first of all, you say, to whom is this problem of boredom occurring? And then you look, I can't find this person. There's just this little monkey mind, blah, 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 blah. Where is this person who's saying all this stuff? And then it starts to dissolve. And then you go, well, I have to read this. So you do enforced curiosity. What is this? Well, there's a lot of strategies about enforced curiosity. For example, you could pretend that you're like the late night host of a TV show. And let's say you're really bored with the book you have to read. I don't want to show any of these books that I have here as an example, but let's say this is a book, and it's a book by John P. Waterhole. Hey, John P. Waterhole, I'm not really interested in your book, but it's my job as the late night TV show host of this program to ask you what's in your new book, How to Build an Outhouse. Okay, well, I'm very, very curious about this. John P. Waterhole, what's the first step about building an outhouse? And then you start to think this through and get really curious. This is not a perfect strategy, but it is quite good. It can also help you read faster because you can pretend in your mind that you have to be prepared to have this interview with John P. Waterhole about how to build an outhouse in 5 hours from now. And so you just start reading differently. You zero in, you laser in quite a different way. And I would highly encourage you to give that a try. Yes, it sounds silly, but I used to do this in university all the time. I did not want to read City of God by St. Augustine. But what I did is I pretended that Frank Zappa, of all people, was going to be the host of the Frank Zappa Does Philosophy talk show. And he needed to interview St. Augustine about it. And so that got me very, very curious. What would a show between Frank Zappa and St. Augustine be like? And what would they talk about? And I made a mistake at that time. Well, it wasn't really a mistake, but I'll never forget actually submitting an essay. And in that case, it was Zappa with Karl Marx. And the professor made me rewrite it. But I actually wrote out the conversation between these two people. But I was so bored of these texts, and I was so bored of the idea of the assignment that I had to come up with a strategy. And now I'm calling it enforced curiosity. I didn't really have a name for it. This is back in second year of university. And I drew little illustrations and all this sort of stuff. But the reality is I came to understand quite well what the heck was going on in this text. And I had Frank Zappa help me do it. It's a mental model. And if you think that mental models, that can never work, there's good research that mental models actually do work. And Nir Eyal in Indistractable shares some of that research, and it's sound. And look, recent science shows that it's true. Nietzsche was talking about this more than 100 years ago. So, you can cross-index these things. And I think if you look back deeper and deeper into history, you'll find that mental models and what's called modeling is very, very old. So, Tony Robbins and his modeling stuff sounded all new, and they put some whiz-bang stuff on there. But it's been going on for a long time. And one way to make yourself more curious is to zone in on things as somebody else. Assume a mask, a persona that is not your own. A lot of people like to do this with they like to do this with Sherlock Holmes. So I get a lot of people who email me when they take the free course at magneticmemory-method.com. They say, wow, I feel like Sherlock Holmes. Even though I personally don't think that that's the best metaphor for using these techniques, I'm just like, great, you get it. You're using this kind of modeling, and it's very, very powerful, or it can be. The thing is, though, you want to make sure you're not deluding yourself. You don't want to think that you have powers you don't have, okay? So that's very important. The other thing to note is that people enforce models on each other all the time. So there's something called learned helplessness, for example. So let's say you're afraid of heights and you go around saying, I'm so afraid of heights, I can't walk across the bridge. Then the people in your life, they will say, oh, we better avoid this bridge because you're afraid of heights, right? Now that model is now being enforced on you as a prison because you trained your environment to lock you into learned helplessness. So you've got to be careful about that as well. And so a lot of students, and we've seen it today, oh, I can't remember anything, right? Well, if you're saying that to everybody around you, you're going to be like, oh, you're the guy who can't remember anything. That's just the way you are. And then it just gets reinforced. So you got to get rid of that stuff. So you've got to avoid self-delusion on the one hand, and you've got to avoid training others to keep you that in a way that keeps you self-deluded, right? So it's almost like a different form of the challenge frustration curve. Kai is in the house. Good to see you, Kai. Yes, I had Frank Zappa help me. Frank Zappa helps me a lot. And there's no way to delay the trouble coming every day. I love Frank Zappa. JL says, I feel like Paul. So this is the character from Dune, right? If memory serves. I'm not sure if that's who you mean, but if you feel like that, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But fear is the mind killer, right? Avoid it at all costs. Kai says, can't afford masterclass till this summer, but should I practice memory palaces somehow till then? Yes, indeed. Why wait? Make sure you take the free course, and the masterclass will take your practice deeper. In fact, the more you practice in advance, then you will be even more suited to get great value from it. All right. So JL says, yes, he uses mnemonics to remember names. I forget if he used it for other things. Really? I'm going to have to go and reread that then. I don't remember that at all, but I read Dune when I was a teenager, so it's been a long time. One of the things about Dune that I remember seeing The Matrix, and I remember thinking, wow, this is like Dune in a lot of ways. You know, the spice will do these things for you. But the spice and the Matrix, they seem to go together somehow. In terms of, I mean, what are these things about? They're about an awakening, right? And Adolfo is in the house. Good to see you, Adolfo. A very awake figure indeed. Nice to have you here as always. If you're just joining us, hit thumbs up. If you're new here, get subscribed to this channel, bell icon, notifications, all that jazz, so you don't miss a thing. We go deep into memory training and everything it takes to learn how to study effectively for long hours, because I love studying for long hours. And I have to, because I read big books. Bam. That's a fatty right there. All right, so another thing about mindset is that you got to understand motivation. Now, motivation is a tricky fish because there's at least two kinds, right? Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. But rather than me doing all kinds of lollygagging about it, I would suggest two resources that I have for you on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. So Olly Richards, 8 languages he speaks, and Camilla, she's an amazing language learner. They understand motivation very, very well. So I've already got these links down there for you in the link repository below this video, but I'll get them up on the screen for you too. And I highly recommend that you go through those resources and learn motivation from the viewpoints of people who are highly motivated like myself. And we can just say that I think motivation from my own experience is actually not what it seems. And it's pretty, what should I say? It's not the thing to hang your hat on. What you need to do is you need to be able to show up and do it whether you're motivated or not. If you leave it to your feeling like it, well, I feel like it, I don't feel like it. If that's how you're going to play the game, you're going to lose. So become a student of motivation. It's very, very important. And so Kai says, I'm going to do everything I can not to be a memoryless boomer like my parents. Good policy. But I would suggest that what you do is you also be a shining example to what your parents can do now, even though they're maybe, in this situation, and be a shining light. Light a candle. Don't curse the darkness. All right. Another thing about mindset is accountability. So, accountability works differently for different people. Some people are accountable to themselves. I'm sort of an accountable to myself kind of person. But there is some power to group accountability, to having deadlines, to having accountability to maybe just one other person who's external to yourself. And I highly recommend that you explore that topic for yourself because, again, mindset is not about your mind. It's about your basic brain structure and configuration in a network of other minds. And so you can tap into all kinds of sort of powers that way. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but just understand that there's at least three kinds of accountability. Accountability to yourself, accountability to one other person, and accountability to a group. And you can have a little bit of all those things. And, you can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the next category that we got to take care of is the body, because your brain is produced really as part of a well-oiled or poorly oiled unit. And the more your brain is healthy, the more it's going to produce a mind that functions properly and effectively. So, again, I was talking with John Graham this morning, and we were talking about, I was asking him about supplementation, and we were like, no, this is nothing to be done for real effective memory stuff. And so, great, we don't have to talk about that topic anymore, but what we know is that water is basically better than every memory supplement on the market. So consider that. Nutrition, and then timed eating. So here's something that I wish that I would have explored much earlier in my life, but it really matters when you eat when you're studying. So if you want to study effectively and have longer duration in how long you can study, then what you want to do is think about how different foods affect you. So rotation diets are really helpful. Elimination diets are really helpful. And just figuring things out and then keeping a food journal. And you can become a mean, lean machine of focus because later tonight I have to study. That food is going to kick in. And if you get real ninja about this, you know that you have a 72-hour digestion cycle at least. Maybe it's a little shorter for you, maybe it's a little longer, right? But as a general metric, 72 hours. And you can even think, in 3 days from now, I have an exam. So I am definitely not eating that because it could hit you 3 days in advance. Now, you got to look into this stuff. Search up rotation diets, search up elimination diet, figure it out, and dig your wells before you're thirsty. Because there's a whole lot of people who come to me, I've got an exam in 3 days, what do I do? Well, what you do is you go in next time, make sure that you have all this knowledge so that you don't wind up in a drought when you need it. Be prepared. Be prepared to execute any last move, even with your head cut off. This is the path of the memory samurai, right? You want to be able to perform no matter what's going on. All right. So that's a very, very important thing. And then, having some light, tight sleep. My best years really were when I had this bedroom with, what were they called in this country? Jalousie. Blinds, basically, but blinds that were made out of metal. And man, just dark as dark gets. I never slept so well in my life. And those were the years where I did my long-term dream recall experiments, the initial rounds that led to the course in the masterclass on how to remember your dreams. And wow, man, do you ever sleep so good when it is dark? No devices, no lights, nothing, just darkness. And you get such good sleep. Which helps you focus for the long term. Adolfo says, I've done extremely well with intermittent fasting. I usually don't eat 24 hours before a big exam, and I'm super lucid during the exam. Wonderful. Yeah, that's part of the strategy is you can also do fasting. I'm a faster. I fast different ways and so forth. And it is amazing how present you can be when you're fasting. I've looked into some research, is fasting good for memory and so forth, and some people say yes, some people say no. It really depends. But notice that your fitness for fasting will have to do with your fasting for fitness, so to speak, right? You've got to have a roundedness to all these things. You've got to work towards being well structured in all the things that you're doing. So in order to do that, you're going to, need to start somewhere and make a study of yourself, of your body. Cher is here. Good morning. Good to see you. Chrono Walking. Thank you so much. He says that some people, that's something people can do while quarantined. MMM classes. Yes, I hope so. Thank you for that, and thanks for your support of this initiative. By the way, Chrono Walking is reminding me there are now channel memberships enabled on this channel. So if you want to do that, got some cool stuff for you all. And one of the best things that you can do is really focus on your memory. Some of the problems that we're seeing now, people don't think, they don't have critical thinking skills. And if you have good memory, your critical thinking skills are going to go up. And so much of the issues and the bad decisions that have been made and the decisions upon decisions that get worse and worse are coming from so many people that don't have access to better critical thinking. And look, better memory is not exactly going to guarantee that you somehow think better, because you then need to direct those skills at studying better decision making. So one of my favorite books, I wasn't planning of thinking about it today, but really it's really, really good. It's called Decisive. And Decisive gives you some heuristics, some rules of thumb for thinking better. We've talked about it on a live stream before. Very powerful book. Please get into it. It's very, very good, and it'll help you. All right. So then when it comes to your body, you can do meditation and movement. And so daily meditation is huge. If you're not meditating at least 4 times a week, you're not going to get the benefits. So you need to be meditating 4 times a week, ideally every day. And I have certain meditation patterns that I follow, and I highly recommend that you consider those ones, but there's many out there. And meditation is not, your meditation practice is not a destination. It's a journey, and you keep going and going, learning new things, trying new things, adding new things, etc. It's not like there's any special Bible that has the be-all and the end-all of meditation. Likewise with movement, you can keep understanding movement, and it's very, very, very important to do that, right? And another thing that I found really useful is loose clothing. A lot of people, they're just dressed for failure. They're dressed in ways that are going to keep their body uncomfortable. It's going to restrict their circulation. Just undo the belt. Make sure you got nice socks on, nice loose pants, nice loose fitting shirt that can breathe. When I was in university, I wore linen a lot, especially in the summer, so that my clothes breathed, my skin got some air, and I might take up the linen habit again. It's hard to imagine that I used to wear so much damn linen, but I did. And I was quite influenced by a friend of mine who was a linen fanatic, but I never took up his fetish for lizard skin shoes or whatever they were made out of. He was crocodile skin shoes. He had all kinds of shoes. Anyway, he was a lawyer. But first he was a law student who started living large like a lawyer before he got there because he wanted to practice. And sadly, we lost him, but I miss him dearly. He was a very smart guy. And he recommended linen. Well, thank you for that super chat, Adolfo. I really appreciate it. If you had to recommend one book for critical thinking and problem solving, which book would you recommend? I have Decisive, by the way. Well, thank you. I'm really honored for your super chat. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate when people support this work and help forward the cause. And as I was mentioning earlier, it all goes into some of the things that I want to do, such as potentially getting the rights to make an audiobook of The Art of Memory. So everything goes towards all of these projects. And doing more videos, having another video editor, etc. So every penny actually really helps a lot to be able to do that. So thank you, Adolfo. Now, I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm not sure that I would recommend one book for critical thinking and problem solving. But the first thing that comes to mind is something that was put together, if memory serves, by Hazard Adams. It's Critical Theory Since Plato by Hazard Adams. Glad I got that name. Now, I'm not sure that it is exactly the book for you, but the reason why that it comes to mind, Adolfo, is because it's just so good. Oh man. I'm sorry, my thing is going crazy here. My keyboard, it just really has some issues lately. But it's Critical Thinking Since Plato, put together by Hazard Adams. And what I think you might notice there that's so super powerful is it is showing you the theory by which critical thinking is done. And why that's so precious and important and powerful is because it's the meta thinking. And I'm not sure if it's in that one, but one thing that has really been powerful too is P.D. Jules has an article. Well, he has a book called Interpretation. And Interpretation, basically, I think the chapter extracted from that is called something like, is there one and only one correct interpretation? And what that does, and part of that writing from P.D. Jules can be as boring as watching paint dry. But if you really get through it and you really think it through, one of the things that it's going to help you do is to think computationally. And so there's that. So critical thinking and problem solving, I think, needs some meta level skills. And I think you need to see the history of it. So Hazard Adams' Critical Theory Since Plato is the first thing that comes to mind. And if it is the one thing that I would recommend, look, I have the bias, the admitted bias of it having helped me so much. So whether that's going to reproduce, I don't know. But basically, it's taking this and timesing it by 1,000 historically. And it's kind of literary theory oriented. But what else is there in the world except for text? If you really understand that everything that we're doing in the world is textual engagement, which we talked about earlier today when we were talking about the gematria. And I'm not trying to be an essentialist. In fact, I'm not an essentialist at all. I'm a realist. But there is something essential to the argument that the world is textual because we are communicating in code, and those codes are words, and those words are built from things. And when we can understand the historicity of how things are built from words over time and how that people have agendas and so forth in what they consider to be truthful or factual, it's really powerful in helping you make better decisions, in helping you solve problems, in helping you think critically. I can send you at some point a book chapter that I wrote in a book about some of these matters, which kind of condenses some of this down in terms of thinking through movies. But really, the thing is to just start practicing critical thinking and problem solving, which you already do. In any case, I will keep thinking about what might be more appropriate examples. But at the end of the day, I don't think it would be one book. I think it would be something that is a collection. And I just don't see enough interest in it. I've done some videos on critical thinking, and I don't see that people are interested in it enough. But I'd like to do more critical thinking. So if there is more interest, we can probably put a course around it. People don't maybe know this, but I used to teach it at university. I taught it for a fourth year level course on critical thinking for about 3 years, I think it was, at least. It seemed like forever. Anyway, it's a big topic, but it's also one that can be very, very focused and direct. The other thing too is to know the difference between what's called continental philosophy and analytic philosophy, and know where those things come together. Know why the analytic philosophy has such a grip on things, particularly in North America, and know why that continental philosophy has such a grip on things, and then know how they complement each other, and know that really analytic philosophy turns you're blowing me away here, Adolfo. You just distracted me. But critical thinking or continental philosophy turns analytical philosophy into a whole different gambit when you do that. But thank you so much for your support today. I really appreciate it. and you say, I noticed that there's a new membership option on this channel. Can you go over the different benefits of each level at the end of the stream? I'm always interested in more MMM. Well, Adolfo, you already have just about everything that's there. But yeah, I can say a few things about it. It's sort of in development. At first, I was just going to leave it and not do it. But yeah, at the end of the stream, we can dive into that. So thank you for highlighting it and raising it. We do have some channel members already, which I'll take this opportunity to thank INC, JSP, and George Lauder and Cromwell Walking, who have already jumped in to support. Cromwell Walking was always super chatting all along, and so that's a great, wonderful thing. It's kind of like putting your super chats on autopilot, I guess. But yeah, we'll talk about it at the end of the stream, as you say. Well, we better just talk about it now. Basically, one of the things that it's going to let us do, Adolfo, is kind of like what we've talked about. How do we do this in the mastermind? So on the community tab, for example, we can put trainings, videos that are only for people. And so we're going to start doing that. Once there's more people in there, monthly there'll be a video that appears on the community tab, but only for people who are supporting at that level. There'll be posts just for them, so we can have those discussions. And because there are people who are motivated enough to support it, then there'll be some discussion there, but it'll only be visible for those people. I think it's pretty cool how that it all works. But obviously we need a certain amount of volume in order to make it work, and it's already started. One thing to notice is that when you're going to do something, you've got to get started, and then you got to persist. You got to be consistent. And so no matter what it is, this thing or the other thing, always going. And Adolfo and I talk a lot about how to grow this community, how to get more people engaged, doing things, and break the 80-20 rule. Because every classroom in the world, I saw it. I used to be a professor. I'd walk into a room the first day. Wow, amazing, 500 people in this room. I saw it as a student. Wow, amazing, 500 people in this room. Every class, whether I taught it or somebody else taught it, it always goes down over time. It's just the 80-20 rule. In any case, we can break it. I'm sure we can. And if we get together, we'll make it happen. All right. So carrying on, the body, loose clothing. The other thing is, whoa, cowboy. Sorry, I'm going to have to reset my keyboard. Hey, look at that. Keyboard is now going off. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know. Does anybody know how to stop this? I find that it's just totally on this Mac keyboard. It's totally up to some weird force when that happens. I don't know why it happens. And let's not cast aspersions onto Mac, but I'm a little bit disappointed with them in the last couple of years. Yeah. But this is a good opportunity to actually review something, because I wanted to mention about alternating skills. When you're taking breaks and you're alternating skills, one of the things that I used to do, people say, what are the benefits of memory techniques? Once that I had the memory techniques, I actually started an enterprise, which is that I had a small press when I was in university. So I was reading books, but I was also writing them. And I wrote many books when I was in graduate school. I had more time than I knew what to do with, because I would read my stuff and then I would remember what it was that needed to be remembered. And then I'd be like, now what? So I started with a friend, a small press, and I also wrote books for other presses. And so I've always been meaning to share some of these things with you. But this is one of my first books that was put out by a small press in Geneva, Ohio, of all places. And Solid as Echo, this was called. And I always published under my initials. And you could see my interest in the memory techniques and the gematria very, very early on in these bizarre texts, because I would build all kinds of images into the stories. They were, out of letters and numbers and stuff like that. So I was embedding the memory tradition into these texts from a very early age. But I also used to just do this when I was in high school and I was a teenager. I used to make little books like this. And this is just a photocopied book. And I'd send these all over the world. It was the zine culture thing, and had all kinds of crazy things going on. And it's alternating skills. So a lot of people, when they learn memory techniques, what they're able to do is actually have great rest from alternating their skills. And you can do all kinds of things. You can learn other things, like learning how to make books, this was actually done by another press, Michael Woods, who was in university with me. And I wrote a book, and it was called The Wallet. And he actually made a wallet for the book called The Wallet to go into. And there it is, The Wallet. Isn't that beautiful? So one of the great benefits is you get to pursue more of your life, more interests. And I was still crushing it with my A pluses and A's and all that stuff in university, and making books, writing books, publishing them. One time, Rob Reed and I, we for our small press, we made this book, and we just thought, wouldn't it be cool if we made a book in the shape of a guillotine, a guillotine blade? Whoosh! And we sat there and we sprayed these things with red paint with our toothbrushes, and we made a whole bunch of them so that they would look like a guillotine blade. Kind of morbid, but the thing is that, and we just did everything. It's got color inside of it and so forth. So you buy time. It might not be your bag to go and be a publisher and think of all kinds of nerdy things to do, but you can. When I was doing my Doktorarbeit, I had this published by my own press, and we spent hours trying to figure out how to animate the page numbers so they would crawl across the page. And I would make films and stuff. This is from a film that I made. I had so much time on my hands. I was like, there's just endless things that you get to do when you have memory techniques. You have so much time on your hands. So the point is, though, to tie this back to how this is going to help you study effectively for long hours, is that when you alternate your skills, you're actually able to get better at your core skills. We did this one too, open letter, closed book. This one's quite funny because the pages are all locked shut, and it has a knife in the back so that you can unlock the pages. You can actually cut them open. Anyway, the point, again, is that you can explore so much more, and you're actually fortifying your ability to learn because you're alternating skills. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can read the science on it in Alex Peng's Rest. This book hadn't even been probably a thought in his mind back when I was doing this, but I somehow always felt the benefits of it. Study, use memory palaces, use the memory techniques, blast the information into your mind, and then go do something else. And just focus on some other skill, and you'll have the time to do it. And heck, I even wrote this book, which I am glad disappears because we wouldn't want anybody to know about this one. In any case, give that a try, and it'll help you practice. All right, so where were we before my keyboard went crazy? We were going to talk more about the body, and we were talking about loose clothing, if memory serves. And then we're going to talk about hot and cold showering. So this is pretty cool. Some people say that this helps open up the vagus nerve, sending all kinds of chemicals up to your brain and all that sort of stuff. I think that the cold showering thing is also just good for building mental toughness and discipline. Because when you think about it, your mind is like, oh, I don't want to show up. I don't want to study. I'm too tired. The reality is, if you are able to just get yourself into a cold shower, that mental toughness will develop as a skill that bleeds over into other things. And it's very, very powerful. So that's another way to work with your body to trigger things and to build up a lot of strength. And then you have strategic socialization. So you might not think of this as a body thing, but it is true. When you're with other people, it creates healthy chemicals in your brain. Now, we have a time when we might not, we might need to not be around people so much. That depends on a lot of factors, but in normal conditions, and we're not going to get bogged down into it, but there's a lot of brain chemicals that are produced when we are with other people, and it's very, very important. So study groups. We talked about accountability as a strategy for studying effectively over long hours. I had these in universities. They were very, very powerful, very important to my success, to be able to use the levels of processing effect, sharing our writing with each other, sharing our thoughts verbally with each other, hearing the thoughts from other people. Very, very powerful and very, very important to being able to remember more and to build the duration of how long you're studying. Because the more you're discussing, the more you're processing, the more you're interactive with other people, the more you're getting out of it, the more that these neural networks in your brain are growing. So give that a real good think through how you can get more strategic about how you socialize. And then neurobics. Neurobics are very, very powerful for your progress. And we're going to talk about neurobics in the future. But one of the things that you can do is really, really become a student of neurobics. Just quickly, one thing you can do is like unlocking your door with your eyes closed with the non-dominant hand, brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, etc. Eating things with chopsticks that you wouldn't normally use to eat with chopsticks, etc. There's a lot of neurobics. There's actually a couple of categories of neurobics. So we'll be talking about that in a dedicated video in the near future. And there's just lots to do. And then, of course, there's also mental neurobics, which is challenging yourself to learn topics that you already know from a different angle, revisit them from a different angle. And that's part of why we are doing this new study of the art of memory together. And I'm looking to see if there's enough interest to continue doing it as a series. So if you haven't checked it out yet, please make sure to check it out. And I think you'll really enjoy that. It's already got some interesting discussion going on. I'd love to know your thoughts, especially the criticism that I got. And if you have thoughts about that criticism, I'd love to know. Also, I would remind you that I've got a course called How to Stop Thinking that I'm giving to people who pre-order the Kindle of The Victorious Mind. You can head on over to The Victorious Mind and grab it there. I would really, really love to send you that course. Just send me your receipt when you've got the Kindle version ordered for yourself. I know some people don't read Kindle. The audio is coming. The print version is coming. And people have been telling me that they are getting the Kindle anyway just to support this work. And I really appreciate that. Now, before we go, we're going to catch up with some chat. We're going to have a Q&A. And Adolfo had a request. By the way, let me know, Adolfo, if that was useful for you with the critical thinking. If we can get a critical thinking group together, that would be an amazing discussion group. Again, I taught it for several years at university, and I remember what we talked about in those courses. It was an amazing thing. I loved teaching critical thinking. There's all kinds of exercises that we can do that'll really, boom, open up your critical thinking skills. And there's even an audio I've already created called How to Think, and it's got 22 thinking strategies for you. So I got to get that to you, Adolfo. You probably already have access to it, but let's definitely dig deeper into that, because I'd love to do more critical thinking if there's interest. James says, approximately how many books do you manage to read in a year? That's a good question. I should really think through the numbers. The question, I would reframe the question, James. It's not how many books do I manage to read in a year? It's how many good books have I managed to translate effective techniques into action? I think that would be a more interesting thing, because how much I read is secondary to how much I retain and put into action. But how much I read, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it really boils down to a good 2 to 3 on average per week. So that's a good metric. But then in terms of how much of that actually turns into useful action, it would be much less. But that's the stuff to pay attention to. That's the stuff to track. And that's what I do track. And probably what you'll notice is that I'm as generous as I possibly can be in letting you know what those books are. And one of the things that we might do, to Adolfo's question about membership, is to honor those membership supporters, potentially just to have those book recommendations just as part of that. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Really, all this world with all its silly numbers and money and all that stuff is a bit tiring and tedious from time to time. But the game is there. Everybody's forced to play it. And so that's how it goes sometimes. All right. So JL says, my language learning skyrocketed with study groups. I felt like I was cheating. Yes, well, if you're in groups, you certainly can accelerate your practice. And this is the mystery. Why do more people not get engaged? It's so good for your learning. We don't know necessarily. We can only encourage others to get in there, get involved, to do it. Austin asks, good to see you, Austin. Thanks for being here. Any advice for procedural memory? I had a focal seizure in the left hemisphere of my brain 12 months ago. I can hardly hold physical processes in mind without questions, specifically for building homes. Without quests. I'm not sure what quest is. Is it question? And I'm not sure about building homes. But thank you for asking. Very good of you to be thinking about it in terms of procedural memory. This is something where it's kind of, I got to stay out of my lane because it's dealing with physical things that have a medical issue going on. So I'm not entirely sure the extent to which that I can speak intelligently at all. But that said, I would recommend maybe some light passive memory training in the beginning. And passive memory training would be something like, okay, so instead of using mnemonics, right, you could have just a number of words or numbers on cards. So instead of going 40, okay, that's, going to be an image, right? Which is rice for me because 4 is R and 0 is S. And I usually use Condoleezza rice, but I'll sometimes use other variations. Instead of Condoleezza rice in my memory in a Mary Palace, and instead of Sart for 04, and instead of Bread's Up for 09, all I would do is I would have these cards. And I don't know exactly how to design this properly. I've actually thought of getting a grant to do an app that would do this for passive memory. But this is something where you wouldn't use memory techniques, and then you would just you would mix it up with a bunch of numbers you didn't see. And then you would go through the numbers, and your question would just simply be, did I see this an hour ago? Yes or no? And then you would check your accuracy. And that just passively trains because you're just asking, did I see it or not, right? It's kind of weird to see how that works, but it's known in the memory science to be a way of rehabilitating certain things. Whether or not it's going to rehabilitate that, I don't know, but it's worth pursuing. So that's an idea for you. But other than that, I think you're a bit in the realm of physical therapy. So I apologize, I can't quite speak any more directly than that. And I would just take that idea of passive memory training to a professional and ask them about it. All right. Bat is here from North Carolina. Great to see you, Bat. Thanks for being with us. Adolfo says, I'm really interested in joining an elite active magnetic memory method study training group, even if it's only for accountability. What are my thoughts? My thoughts are, it is amazing. You and I should have a chat about how we can maybe make this work. And just to be direct to everybody who's here, this is a marketing question because, we've got to create it and we've got to use a certain filter in order to make sure that it's full of serious people. But I'm really totally willing to lead it. It's just a matter of the actual populating of the group. But my thoughts are it would be amazing. It's not just about accountability, but it's also about having shared lingo, knowing that the people know the memory techniques, knowing that they're serious about them, and that they have specific goals that they not only want accountability for, but they want support for it. And so David's saying he would do it as well. Let's think more about it. What would you need to see? How would it need to be structured? When would it need to be structured? What's going to work for you? And let's figure out how to do it. Let's figure out how to make it happen. And yeah, I'm totally optimistic and positive that it can work and figure out that sort of thing. Chroma Wagon says, count me in also. Indeed, that'd be amazing. We just have to figure it out. So let us see. We might need Zoom or something like that, which I don't currently have that software. I have a software though that I think is the equivalent. So that makes 3. JL says that would help a lot for sure. I often find I get stuck on stupid things. I think a group would help keep a flow. I would be interested. All right. So I need more data. Like how often would you be interested? What would be the buy-in that makes sense for you? What would be I think a curriculum would be kind of interesting and important so that everybody's sort of on the same page about certain things. That curriculum doesn't necessarily mean you're going to study things, but it might be that we need to read certain books, like make sure you read Rest, right? So that you understand the core concepts there. You're putting some of those things into action, as I myself do. Okay, so wonderful. We're having a mastermind discussion on the YouTubes. Love it. All right. The other thing that we kind of have to look out for, and it may be that we just need to start doing this, is my voice is starting to be challenged. So as much as I love to do these mega live streams and so forth, I've got to start being more realistic about it. Otherwise, there aren't going to be any live streams at all, unfortunately, if I blow my box, which we don't want to see happen. So it might need to be a little bit more exclusive, which is just the way it is sometimes. But hopefully we'll figure it out, and I won't let passion drive me to running it into the ground. Okay, so Austin asks, how was the TED Talk? Do we get brownie points for being fans before you blow up? The brownie points are in the present moment. Enjoy them while you got them. But yes, I'm sure you do. Does that mean we can expect you to leave comments when the YouTube video comes out and share it around and so forth? I hope so. But how was it? It was amazing. It was fun. And the neat thing about it is that I used the techniques, and now, because I mean, look, basically what ended up happening is I wrote another talk, because the one that I wrote and was prepared to give, it just wasn't right. And so, I mean, I'll use that material eventually for something, but I had to write another one because it just didn't feel right. It wasn't right in my gut. It was the thing I proposed to do, and I thought, should I tell them that I'm switching because it doesn't feel right? Nah, whatever. So, so that was interesting. And then, you know, what are you going to do if you suddenly have the impulse, the gut feeling that this isn't right, and you got to get it memorized, right? And you got to do it. So that was cool, and it worked. And it was interesting too, because, and I'm going to update my course on how to memorize speeches in the masterclass with a walkthrough of it, because one of the things that happened is in the dress rehearsal, everybody laughed exactly where I planned for the laughter to come, but they didn't when I gave the actual talk, but they laughed later at this spot where they laughed for the thing that was supposed to be funny the first time, the second time it came around. So anyway, it's weird because, the point is that one of the things that you have to be able to do when you're memorizing speeches and delivering talks live is you have to be able to compensate for the unexpected, including when you're expecting laughter and it doesn't come. Because again, in the dress rehearsal, they laughed on cue, just where it was designed to produce laughter. But then in the real thing, they didn't. And then they laughed later when I wasn't expecting laughter. So anyway, that's kind of part of the game that we can talk about. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun. And I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, the video version, whenever it comes out, is going to speak for itself. And I would love to know your feedback because I want to improve. I want to be able to do, the next time I do it, to do it even better. And I have no idea what it looks like because I'm the guy that was in the screen delivering it, but I'm sure it would be fine. Let's see. So JL says he's not sure he could commit until a couple months, major life events. Great. Well, we'll design it in a way that people can parachute in and out, I guess. Although maybe we shouldn't do it that way. Maybe it should be like an extended 6-month buy-in or something like that. Anyway, we'll figure it out. I'd suggest that we talk about it since you're all in our mastermind group that are interested. I'm not sure if JL is in there. I don't recall seeing you before, but there are a lot of people who don't use our discussion group, so that's possible. But we can discuss it there. Elliot is here. Good to see you here. Check out Pears Bersto speaking with freedom at the Singing Zone. He shows you how to use your voice without strange. Oh, thank you so much for that, Elliot. It's weird because I always do vocal warm-ups, but I think that the strain is not necessarily coming from using it so much. It seems to be coming from a different issue, but it can be that it's exacerbated by what I'm doing. Anyway, it's actually been about a 2-year odyssey, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse. But I appreciate that. I'm gonna actually. I'm thinking of my mnemonics. Pierce Morgan, who is, well, what is he doing? A bear Stau. Well, the Berlin bear is Stau. So there's, what do you call that in German? Stammtisch. So he's got an owl at a Stammtisch. All right, Berstau. That should do. Piers Anthony, too. We'll throw him in there because Piers Morgan is questionable. Maybe. No, I like the guy. Kai's interested. Excellent. Yeah, so interest. We'll see what that should be. But maybe we can make that part of the part of the thing. Because this new channel memberships thing, it actually lets us do private live streams through YouTube. So maybe that's the way to do it. And just, but it's always just a marketing thing, right? So there's something that, I don't know, maybe Adolfo can help out with it at some point when, in the future, or help me find help for it. Because there's just a massive opportunity here, but I'm unfortunately stuck with the just one guy syndrome. And so we're having a lot of interesting things, but let's carry on with our next module here on how to study effectively for long hours. And I really appreciate the discussion about crafting and refining our group. Let's do it. We'll get there. Environment. So one thing that I made a lot of mistakes around is I used to study in the dark. As I started, and I mentioned, I had these offices when I was a grad student. All of these offices were either in the basement or central in the building. There was no light. That's not good. You need light. You need light, 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 light. One of the things when I was really in the depths of the darkest years of my mental illness, I boarded up a window that would have brought so much beautiful light. And that was really intense, but it just was the way that it was at that time. But I didn't know at the time that I was actually harming myself from doing that. So I worked in the dark all the time. Light, you need light, you need light. And if you want to know more about that story, it's in The Victorious Mind, which you can grab for pre-order now on Amazon. And that link will take you there, should take you there regardless of whatever country you're in. Another thing too, which is something that I've always loved, is the idea of green. It's known that you'll be more creative in your thinking, or studies show, there's strong reason to believe from scientific evidence, that you'll be stronger in your creative thinking, creative problem solving, etc. if you have green. Now, not just any green, but green from plants. So look into that research yourself, of course, before you go and break the bank buying plants. But it's really, I think, been useful for me. We got to fix the mnemonic. Thanks, Elliot. Per Bristow. All right, so we can have him towing Brisbane on a Piers Anthony a truck loaded with Piers Anthony books. Per Bristow or Bristow. I'm not sure how you're pronouncing that. Anyway, green. Really good. So I'm just not a plant caring person, although I have done gardening for people in my day and in yet another of my many weird, odd jobs that I had. But I can take care of a plant good enough to have plants in the environment. And I remember living in Berlin, I was roommates with a friend and so forth, and just having all these plants everywhere. And he's just like, oh, look at all these plants. And I'm like, I'm busy. I'm writing books. I need them. They help me focus. They help me concentrate for longer hours. And very, very important and powerful. And then multiple locations. So let me teach you about the concept of road work. I love this. I knew it in university. I heard the term road work later, and then I revived it because I was like, yeah, that used to help. Study in a location, then move to another location, then move to another location. And so, for example, one thing I loved to do was go from floor to floor in the library and just study for a while, then go down one floor. And in that break, you're just reconfiguring things. Now, there's some memory science I've read that norepinephrine is triggered when you're in novel, new locations. So that might be part of why it helps with remembering more. But this is something very, very useful and important to think about. Can you structure? Remember, we started today's talk with strategy. Can you, in your strategy and planning, have multiple locations in mind ready to go so that you go? So in Toronto, not only did I used to go from floor to floor in the library, but I would also go from cafe to cafe. And I would go, we have Tim Hortons in Canada. I'd go from this Tim Hortons to that Tim Hortons. They used to have soup. I used to eat their soup. And I never drank coffee all through university. I don't know how on earth that I did it, but from age 14 to about 38, I never drank coffee. Very strange. But that's just the way it was. And I think it was because when I was 14, I drank coffee so much that I just blew my coffee hatch for decades to come. But in any case, I would go from these cafes to cafes to cafes. And I think that really, really helped. And a lot of people who talk about studying effectively talk about multiple locations. So there's something to it, and it may be norepinephrine. It could be other things. Also, it's just multiple gradations of light, right? You get out into the light when you walk from place to place. Now, as a writer, I think of it as road work, because I heard Gary Halbert talking about how he likes to walk a certain amount going from place to place. So I've just about anything that you've read from me, blog posts, books, etc., I write for about 40 minutes at a time. Then I go to some other place and write some more. It's beautiful. And then you get some fitness in, which is all, I never heard of it before this, but apparently that's what Charles Dickens did, a lot of walking. I don't know that he walked from cafe to cafe, but he walked a lot during every day. And then these ideas come, and you go, oh, and you sort and sift and screen. You remember more because of diffuse thinking. All the stuff, you're concentrated, focus, and then it's just as you do other things. You notice the world, etc. Beautiful. So multiple locations is a strategy. And then you can think of locations a little bit differently, because you can have locations that trigger study habits. So, I have this thing here, not just because I don't like to use online journals, but I journal with a big old journal because the habit of journaling is much more likely to get done when you can't ignore it. It's big in space. You just keep knocking into it. You keep rocking into it. You can't ignore it. It's very, very, very powerful and important to use space in this way. So one of the things that you can do is have, whatever pile of books that you're reading in a place where you just can't miss them. And this is, it's so obvious and common sense. You'd be like, yeah, okay, wizard. But how many people actually do it? As I've been working on my Art of Memory project, and thank you everybody who's left a comment on that video, please continue to leave comments on it so that it can succeed and I can know more about whether I should continue the series. But as I work on this, so that I don't forget that this is the project, I have it in space to trigger, now it's time to do this every day and get through it. Mind maps. When I do a new course, for weeks, right here in this space was the mind map for the Brain Exercise Bootcamp. I just get it done because it's there and it doesn't leave until it's done. So locations and triggers can make sure that you're more consistent and you're working longer hours because you have that there. And then morning ritual locations. So how does morning meditation get done? Because it's encoded in space, right? You go and you sit and you do the things that need to get done in that space. An actual dedicated pillow for sitting in that space that you cross past every morning. Sit, you get it done. Very, very important. Now, Elliot says, Gary Halbert was a great copywriter, one of the elite. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you know him. And thank you for adding that, because he was indeed. And from him, I learned about having a fighter pilot attitude in all of these things. And very, very important. He was a great, great, great writer. Everybody should study him, whether they're copywriting or not. Kenji B says, your Art of Memory video was really cool. Can't wait for the next one. Thank you for saying that, Kenji. Please go and say that on the video itself. That really helps with making sure that it's featured more. Because in order for me to do the next one, we need to see that it's actually succeeding, that it's being featured. And to help it be featured, your comment on that would be very, very useful. Now, I know people are busy and they don't have all that sort of time left, right, and center, but I really appreciate every single last engagement with these videos because it helps to teach the robots, basically, that humans care. And if the robots aren't seeing that, then they think humans don't care, and it disappears. And then that means the series doesn't get done. And then that means the evil Dr. Forget gets to take over, and the Art of Memory, well, I'm not sure I'm the one who's going to make sure that the Art of Memory gets remembered or not, but hoping to be part of it, hoping to link the internet together so that people know and that it grows over time and gets stronger and stronger. So I appreciate that. Every little last thing helps. We are fighting the 80-20 rule, but, as Gary Halbert would say and Elliot would know, whatever. That's one of Gary Halbert's constant refrains again and again and again. He always just inserts this paragraph, one word paragraph, whatever. But it's not whatever. We need to get together. We need to train these machines because Skynet is real. It's coming and it's here. All right, so locations that trigger study habits, morning ritual locations, so that you're effective about it. This is all about effective. You want to do things for long hours? You've got to train. You've got to train yourself to be able to do long hours. One of the best things you can do to train for long hours is have a meditation ritual that is focus oriented. So this is really, really important. Likewise, Kai, I don't know if I saw a comment from there or over there. I haven't seen all of them, but please engage with it. Thumbs up, all that stuff. And if you're here now, thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are. I got a bunch of questions I got to scan back through to answer, and I will do so. But make it your ritual also, not just to meditate, but to support the content that you view, interact with it, engage it, because otherwise it's going to disappear. And Elliot says, mind maps, that's like blueprints for architects. Yeah, it is kind of like blueprinting, exactly. And being the architect of your own dreams, your own future, your own learning. Engage in it. Only you can. No one else can. So anyway, back to meditation. Your meditations, like think of the congruency between your meditation practice and the extent of your focus and your ability to study for long periods of time. Are you meditating for like, oh, I sat for 2 minutes, now I can go? Well, that itchy, twitchy sort of, oh, I can only read for 2 minutes before my mind wanders, there might be a connection there. So can you train yourself to be meditating longer and longer and longer? In the way that I've trained myself to meditate longer and longer and longer, and to really get value out of each second so that my mind is wandering less and less and less, is to memorize the Sanskrit. And of course, if you want to know what the heck all that Sanskrit is about, and you want to know how I memorized it, people ask me for mnemonic examples all the time. Unfortunately, they're a little bit blind because I give mnemonic examples all the time. I gave a bunch today already. If you want the longest collection, the longest gathering, the biggest, the fattest, the most detailed, the most intense, the most dedicated, training-focused series of mnemonic examples that I've ever seen in any memory book ever, then you're going to want to get The Victorious Mind, which is now available for pre-order up on oldmagneticmerrymethod.com. But my silly keyboard is going crazy again, so we've got to somehow work that out so I can get you the link up on the screen. But in case you aren't aware, there is a free course for those who send their receipt called How to Stop Thinking that I think you'll find very, very powerful. And it'll help you take morning ritual locations to the next level, because you'll be able to see what to memorize, how to memorize it, and why that it's going to help dissolve that flighty mind so that you can study effectively for long hours. Because there's a simple strategy when my mind wanders that instantly brings back focus, because my mind does wander. It is a busy little mind that I've got to deal with, and it's dealable with. You can deal with it, but you got to have a strategy. You got to have focus. That's what the Victorious Mind is all about. So I hope that you'll get it, and I hope that I see a bunch of emails with your receipts so I can sign you up for How to Stop Thinking, which is a study guide to go along with the Victorious Mind, but also to tide you over until its release date, which is April 30th. All right. And it's also to tide me over, quite frankly, because if I have one major flaw, it's that I'm impatient and I don't like to wait. But it's going to be worth the wait, because this is the most thorough and detailed memory training book I've ever put together, and I think it's going to have some great impact precisely because of its detailed focus on a particular outcome, which is you being victorious over your mind. All right. Adolfo says, can we purchase an autographed copy of Victorious Mind? I think that we will do something like that. But we have to figure out the mechanics of that. It's a little bit, Australia, put with shipping and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, if there's a desire for that, we can make it happen. Definitely, especially for you. Oh, right. In fact, just take that for granted. Look at this. 2 super chats today. Amazing. I really appreciate it. And so many good ideas helping me figure out how to do this so much better for so many more people. I appreciate it very, very much. So JL says, sorry, I'm confused. Where is it? As I say, the Amazon is available for Kindle. I'm not sure what you mean. All I see on Amazon is a Kindle. Yeah, that's currently all that's available. If you have to wait for the next thing, for the audio and the print, then please do. Please do. Please do wait for that. That's fine. You'll still be able to get this How to Stop Thinking course. Kai nailed his blinds, so his room is super dark now. Excellent. All right, so I know that there's some questions here that I've missed. I'm going to get to them. Please stand by. Thank you for your patience. But let's figure out this environmental stuff. Another environmental point, and a lot of people who need this will not do this or won't do this or can't do this, although there's ways you can figure out how to do it, is you might need to consider getting some coaching. I need to figure out how to advance these slides without this keyboard going crazy. But maybe if I plug the keyboard in, it'll stop going monkey insanity. This keyboard has a monkey mind of its own. And these arthritic fingers sometimes have a hard time plugging stuff in. There we go. I think that worked. So hopefully it will advance normally now. But a lot of people just really need to consider getting coaching. And coaching has been huge for me in my own life. I didn't want to do it for years and years. But when I finally turned over and invested in a coach, things accelerated and rocketed. You know, it's a weird thing, but having a personal coach that is devoted, you have their focus 100% on your stuff, can really, really help. In fact, if it's not helping, then it's just the wrong coach, right? And so sometimes you got to try a couple of different people that are not necessarily they make you feel any better or they're any happier. You want someone who's pointed, who's direct, that holds you to what you committed to, but that you also gel with, right? Because I've had certain ones that weren't quite exactly that. So, you explore different ones, etc. But so many people, they would get out of their little prisons that they're in if they would just invest in some coaching. And, I don't know who the best coach is for you, but there was someone recently who emailed me, said, I need some coaching around this. And I was not the right coach for this person, and I told her so. And I said, what it sounds like you need is a performance coach, because, she said, self-study is not for me. And it's like, if you're gonna do language learning and you're gonna use memory techniques to do it, well, self-study is going to be required. So you don't need coaching in memory training and language learning. You need coaching in showing up and doing what needs to be done. And here's something everybody needs to consider. Showing up and doing what needs to be done has one word, and that word is maturity. And if you can't get yourself to do it, then maturity dictates that you need help. And so you should be investing in a coach. So if all these things that we've talked about today do not add up, they do not work for you, or you can't show up to do the work, then there's a word for what needs to be done, and it's called coaching, and you can get a coach. I'm not offering myself as this coach, but I'm saying that there is a thing called coaching. I denied it for far too long. I would have accelerated and rocketed my results way faster if I had been an investment-minded individual. I'm not a person who harbors a lot of regrets, but if there was one thing I wish that I would have done, it would have been to have a coach, a performance coach, much, much sooner. So take it for what it is. Not offering myself as a coach, but sometimes for the right people, it can be done. It is possible, but the reality is you need to try a couple of coaches, figure it out, and the sooner you get into one, the sooner you will succeed. And it is very, very important. And of course, you can be coached by books. You can be coached by programs. You can be coached by accountability meetings in a group, etc. But there's something about having one person really focused on your stuff, and you just have them. My own coach, he wasn't offering himself as an individual one-on-one thing. He was doing coaching as a group. And I told him, look, I'm a bit weird and quirky and all that sort of stuff. Is it possible we could break the mold of what you're doing? And he said, for you, we'll do it. And we've been doing it ever since. It's like 2 years now. And I'm very honored that he would do something that he's not normally offering outside of his group thing, just to focus intensively on what I'm doing. So that's great. All right. So we got some questions to get through. But as a reminder, everybody, please check this out. Get engaged. It is part 1 of a series that I hope to be doing. I need to see a little bit more engagement than what we've got. I'm grateful for the engagement that what we've got, but I want to see more people interested and help me make this a thing that actually makes sense to do, because we need time and space around it. And if I'm going to do a chapter by chapter analysis of this, I need to know that you want it. I've already done all the work. I've got all of the notes. I've been planning to do it for years for a very private offering, but I thought I'd do an experiment and see just how much, because I know there's all kinds of people who want this, but I wanted to see if we could do it for the world. So far, so good, but let's get a little bit more engagement. Let's get a little bit more interaction. Let's see if we can push that 80-20 rule and get even the quiet people to say, yes, I want a chapter by chapter detailed analysis of what this not only is saying, but what it isn't saying, because Frances Yates never used the techniques and she's made a big mess. So let's see if we can clean it up. And if you really get engaged and you read the comments there, you'll see just how tricky this is. Because I myself made a mistake, thanks to Giordano for noticing that. But as you see in our discussion, and he posted a link that is very, very valuable and useful. And we can dig into all this. We can dig real super deep. But I want to know that you want it in that depth. I want you to be part of the conversation. And he's modeling what I want to see from those who are serious. Because not only do I know this book quite thoroughly, but I know a lot of the other things that she's referring to thoroughly. So I can reread them. I can say what she said about them, and then I can say what others have said about them, and I can say what I've concluded from them, and I can do it in a way that's going to be super cool for everybody. But I want to see comments from each and every single one of you in order to really see that there's seriousness for this, and I want to see it throughout the series, because we can pull the plug anytime. But it would be cool. And like I said, I want to generate funds to figure out if I can buy the rights to do the audio edition of this book. It's that important. It's that important, but we need to see that it's important to you as well. Because there's a lot of Bruno works out there too, Giordano Bruno. You may not know who he is. We're building fascination for him because it's really, really important to understand what Bruno is really saying. Not what Frances Yates thinks he's saying, although we should know what Frances Yates thinks he's saying because it's useful, it's valuable, it's provocative. It will push your memory training efforts into a good direction, even if it's wrong about what Bruno was saying. But very strangely, interestingly, solicitously, if that's a word, it connects with this book, Evolving Beyond Thought by Gary Weber, which connects with a lot of other things. And this is very, very provocative and powerful and wonderful. And you can benefit so much. It also happens to connect with what this book is saying, called The Flight of the Garuda, which is also very interesting. Wouldn't you know that maybe things are simpler than they seem, but we have to go through some difficulty in order to understand that simplicity. So is the nature of the universe. All right, so yep, we really, really would benefit from generating a lot of interest around this. The world would. It's not about this, that, or this or that individual. You got to think higher. This is what Bruno was calling for. Think higher than yourself. You don't even exist. Woe to him and her and it that thinks that they are that little person they call Bill or John or Tammy actually exists. Serendipitously, Johnny at 5 Alive says, that'll do. Yes, indeed. All right, again, Victorious Mind, grab that sucker. Get the pre-order going for the Kindle. A lot of people had told me they're just getting the Kindle to support the project. Excellent. That really helps. It tells those robots over there that people care as well. So I was really happy and impressed to see how high it was ranking for a while when I first let people know. And we're going to get into some questions here and go through our chat. The first question is, how can I study for long hours without getting bored? So let's dig into this. And the first thing is that, and we talked about it today, if you're getting bored, the warning sign is that your mindset is off, right? So a lot of people, they're happy to leave their bed messy all day long and then crawl into the same dirty old bed at night. And that's how they treat their minds as well. They wake up and their minds are messy, and they're happy to just live in that messy mind for the rest of the day, and then they go back to sleep with a messy mind, and then they do it all over again, right? But if you work on your mindset, then you won't be bored, because you'll be grateful. You'll be grateful that you actually live in a world where you have books to read, you have courses to complete, you have exams to pass, right? You've got everything you need if you just open your eyes to the amazing opportunity. You've got to create your own recipes for injecting excitement into your life, which is a lot of what the strategy that we were talking about today is all about. And if these techniques are not a recipe for excitement in and of themselves, I don't know what is. But if all else fails, look at all the people who never get to complete their high school diploma, and they walk around for the rest of their lives wishing that they could have at least completed their high school diploma. I get emails from people every week who say, oh, I wish that I would have gone to college. I wish that I'd gone to university. I wish that I could do this. I wish I could do that. It's too late, right? Well, it maybe isn't too late, but I get it. You get to a certain point in life, you've got different responsibilities. I myself dropped out of high school, right? I know what that's like. And I was fortunate. I was lucky that somebody said, wake up, man, and go back to school. I'll never forget. It was the mother of someone I was very good friends with. And Celia, the mother, she was a professor herself. And I had wanted to be like that and so forth. And she had observed all these things about me and so forth. And she said, what the heck are you doing? You're the kind of guy who should be a professor when you grow up. And it hit me like a gong. And I don't recall all the ins and outs of it, but somehow that gong got me back. And I remember going back to the high school, seeing Mr. Schmidt. He was the vice principal. That guy put the fear of God into me one time. I'm showing you all these little books that I used to self-publish when I was a kid. Like this thing. I made dozens and dozens of these little books. And this guy, Mr. Schmidt, he caught me advertising them on the telephone poles around the school. I made posters and I was selling these for, I don't know, it probably says here how much I was charging for them. And I used to advertise them all over the world, and I'd send them all over the world to zine conventions and so forth. This one doesn't seem to say what its cost was, but he somehow found out that the posters were from me. He dragged me to his office, and you ask why I quit high school, why I dropped out. In his corner of his office, he had those cutters that they used to cut the locks off of lockers, right? And he said something to the effect, I'll never forget this, but he said, if I catch you advertising this satanic smut ever again, that's what I'm going to use on you. And he meant a particular part of my body, if you know what I mean. The kind of part of your body that young teenagers definitely want to keep hold of, because they haven't nearly had a chance to explore just what that machinery does, and so, yeah, no wonder I wanted to drop out of high school. But nonetheless, Celia, when she hit that gong that you're the kind of guy who should be a professor, it was so strong. I went back to that guy's office with his locker cutters and got myself back registered in high school. And I stayed with people now who were younger than I was. And whatever, we got it done. But the fact of the matter is that if you're sitting there wondering about how you can study for long hours without getting bored, you got to give your head a shake, because you are so lucky to even have that problem in a world filled with people who wish they would have just completed school. And it was the best decision of my life to go back and complete school. And then I went, and I was also lucky too. An uncle of mine said, he said, you get in school and you stay in school until the very end, because he had been a manager at McDonald's in his life or whatever. He wound up becoming a great manager of a different business, and now he was able to retire early and all kinds of stuff. He lived very well with his stuff. But the whole idea is he said, stay in school as long as you possibly can. So I became an information completionist. And that's what you might want to think, right? Is, okay, so I'm bored of this, but what's the complete picture? How can I complete things, right? And how can I repeat this idea of completing things, because you're never complete, right? So the world's filled with distractions and so forth, but you can always move to add one more detail to this picture, right? And this is a real recipe for success. There's a whole blog post I did on having a rereading strategy so that you're able to fill in those details. The other thing I would say is if you're bored, look for the parts that do interest you, right? So if interest doesn't just spontaneously erupt, and believe me, there's a lot of things in my life, but I'm not interested necessarily in all the things too. There's things that I have to look into, and I have to find the stuff that I'm interested in, the little part that I'm interested in order to expand it, right? But you can also think about the community aspects that we talked about today, the socialization aspects, the accountability group aspects that can help you through the slog and help you figure out what parts might be where you start, how you open the door. And then just invite the information into your memory. So a lot of people don't understand this, but your memory palace and your mind and your memory palace network and all that stuff, it's kind of like a living room, right? So, you know, when you go to your friend's house when you're a teenager and you have two friends. One of your friends, their mom is like, hey, it's good to see you. Sit down on the couch. I'm baking some cookies. I'm going to bring them on out to you. And would you like some milk with your cookies? That's like friend of mom number one. Then you've got like friend number two, and his mom is just like smoking cigarettes, drinking whiskey, and she's like, shut up, go to your room, don't play Judas Priest too loud, right? And she's all barfing and stuff, and you're like, I'm so embarrassed by my mom, don't worry, I'm embarrassed by my mom too, etc. Right? That's mom number two. Well, when you have information that you have to deal with, which mom do you think the information wants to meet? Do you think that it wants to be with the mom who's drunk and about to vomit all over herself because she's too busy smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey to care about anybody? Any guess? No. Information doesn't want that. Information wants, hey, sit down. We've got something. We want to welcome you in, right? Would you like some milk with your cookies? Now, how do you do that? Well, you make sure you have a good memory palace network. You're vibrant and strong with your magnetic imagery. You're able to create it like that because you understand that you don't create it. It's already in you. It just needs to be cultivated. And you follow the exercises in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass to make sure that you know how. There's an exercises page, just chock full of instructions on how to do it. And you make it happen. You make it happen, and it will happen. There is no boredom for those who are trained. It's just not possible. And so if you really want to get ahead, you will find a way. And this question, how do you deal with boredom? Check your head, have a strategy, get your ego out of the way, and do it for others. If you're just doing it for yourself, you're always looking for punishment because you don't have one. There is no self to have, right? It's just the ego that makes you think that you're so special and all your problems are so unique and oh my, whatever. The world's smallest violin crying just for me, just for you. We got to get out of that. Make sense? Thumbs up if it makes sense. If you're not subscribed to this channel, get subscribed. A lot of this stuff may seem repetitive. You may have heard me say it 1,000 times before. But why do we say it again and again and again? Because a lot of people never heard it the first time. And they didn't put it into action the first time. And believe me, there's a lot of things I listen to again and again and again. And not just because I didn't hear it, not just because I didn't memorize it. It's because sometimes it just didn't sink in quite enough. Or the brick has come loose. You got to pop it back in. So welcome to the church of memory, my friends. How many hours a day can I study? That's up to you. I mean, as I said in the beginning, I used to study and study for as many hours as I could. And in some sense, I think it's a 24/7 proposition. Yes, I meditate. Yes, I could learn how to turn my thoughts off completely for short periods of time. I haven't managed to figure out how to do it forever, which apparently you can. I don't know. We'll see when we get there, if that's possible for me. But I can turn them off now. But at the same time, why ask this question? Like, isn't it more like, what is the goal? What am I trying to accomplish? And what do I need to do to minimize time spent and maximize results? So learn the 80-20 rule, figure it out, learn all the things that are very good that we were talking about today in terms of priming, memory palace networks, etc. And get that stuff sorted. Get it sorted immediately. A related question I see all the time is, how long should you study in a single sitting? So this is obviously personal. Figure this out. I know Dave Farrow, who's on the podcast, like 5-10 minutes, blasts, Never work for me. I like to do really just long reading, long focus, long concentration, but it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour. But you need to figure it out for yourself. And you need to think about different times of days that work for you. There's some research into this. Some people really are morning people. Some people are evening people. Split test. Try different things. This goes back to strategy section that we started with. Schedule. And then schedule the sitting. Try different times. Try different durations of time. Try the Pomodoro if that's your thing, etc. How can I study long hours at night? Well, this is the same thing. Like, is night the right time for you? Certainly has been for me, but it isn't anymore. I'm in bed like 8 p.m., between 8 and 10. If I'm not asleep by 10 p.m., something's wrong. Like, I don't know what is wrong, but I'm usually asleep sometimes 7:30. Just my wife laughs at me. It's so funny how she laughs and laughs at how I fall asleep like that. But that's a good thing. And then I'm up with the birds. All right. So I don't know exactly how you can study for long hours at night, but when I have drifted off in the past and so forth, I used to do exactly what we're teaching here. Get up, stretch, go for a walk, change location, make sure. And, I have had night shift work. There's lots of times when I've had to work at night and had to figure this stuff out. Without going into the long history, I've done so many weird jobs, and I was a night janitor at a movie theater. Used to show up there when the Titanic was sinking, which gives you an idea of when that was in historical time. I think it was like 35 days or something, just straight, that I was shifted during that long period of time that the Titanic was sinking every night. And I used to just show up just timed perfectly so I'd watch it sink again and again and again, day after day after day. Anyway, then I would sleep on the couch. This was in Prince George, British Columbia. The snow used to be 16 foot high, and I would have to, because there's no buses at night there, and there's no way you're walking home when the snow's that high, even with the biggest Arctic suit that I had to carry and all that sort of stuff. So, I figured it out. I would just read there and sleep on the couch in the staff room and figure it out how to do it. I was at university at the time, working 3 jobs and studying like crazy. Crazy times. No wonder I had Frank Zappa help me with my essays. All right. So if you were at the beginning, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then mystery, or you watch the replay, which I hope that some of you will. How can I study consistently using these techniques? So this is the big question. Consistency, I think you're going to need to make a plan, and you're going to need to commit to 90 days in order to build the tools of consistency, which are not your thoughts. It's really a neurochemical thing. So what that means is you need to build enough dopamine and myelin and other chemicals to interact with your opioid receptors and get all that stuff firing so that it becomes autopilot. We had a skill earlier about procedural memory, and it's partly your procedural memory. You need to start doing this on autopilot. So, this comes back to having things in space so that you see it and you don't forget. It comes back to having scheduling so that you see it and you don't, and schedule in a way that you see it so that you don't forget, so you don't miss it. Very, very important. And another thing about consistency is that you have a vision for yourself. So I'm pretty sure in the link depository there, I have training on how to make a vision statement. Please make sure that you take that seriously. Go through it. Yes, it's long, but you know what? One of the things that I've seen is the successful people go through the long stuff because they know that if you want the shortcuts, you build the foundations. And the foundations, look, the only guy I ever know who was able to build Rome in a day was my dad. And it was a small Rome, but he gave it a good old try. So in any case, you're going to spend some time. All right. And you're going to spend time strategically building your consistency. How do you avoid getting distracted? Great question. First of all, acknowledge the world is distracting. Is it getting more or less distracting? I don't know. Yes and no, but it's up to you. There's things you can put some control on. And one of the things is turn the device off, right? Just turn it off. Don't even bring it with you. This morning, I saw a guy, Charles. He's a professor here. We've become friends. There's a campus right where I live. He showed me something amazing, And I was like, damn, I wish I had the camera with me. But I don't, because I don't take the camera with me when I go and do my stuff. And the camera means cell phone, right? I just don't have it with me. Oh, well, I could text him when I get home and arrange a meeting. But really, the photograph of what he wanted to show me is not so important at the end of the day. Interesting. I remember it. But the reality is if you're serious about avoiding getting distracted, don't bring distractions with you, period. The times that I do bring the phone with me is when my wife requests me to be contactable. But I don't have to bring the Facebook Messenger app on the phone with me. I don't have to have the Twitter app on the phone with me. I don't have to have the Instagram app on the phone with me. I don't have to have any of that stuff on there. I don't even have to have it connected to the internet. So all there is a little card in there that you buy from the grocery store, and it's just calls, right? Now, this one does go online because you can't even buy one that doesn't go online. But, you can burn out the amount of connection that you've bought very, very quickly by just watching some YouTube videos. And then you can't use the internet anymore for the rest of the month. So if you must have a phone, disable the thing. You don't need to have a fully functioning phone. I have here on my desk, for illustration purposes only, the iPhone S4. I sometimes go in the cafe with this thing because I write books on this, believe it or not. And this thing goes online only to email me the writing that I've done. And they look at this and they're like, wow, where can I get an iPhone like that? It's so small. And I'm just like, I don't know. I have no idea. But this thing is, I think it's an S4. I don't even know my iPhones. But this thing's from 2011. This is just the most beautiful thing because it does not distract me. It just doesn't. It's broken. I never update it because I'm afraid that the app that I use to write on will be destroyed by the update.
Hostage crisis.
Whoa.
Or Chernobyl. This may be
It's playing my audiobook. I do also listen to audiobooks on it. And wow, it's alive, but it goes online. It's apparently online right now because I was uploading some stuff. But that scared me. The thing is you can write books and you can have non-distracting things. See how powerful distractions are? Look, my face has gone white. I'm terrified of my phone here. But in any case, you can have non-distraction phones, and you should. Carmen says, I have this iPhone and I love it. Does it ever do that to you? Just start playing stuff crazily like that? In any case, I wanted to show you, if I can actually get it to work, how exactly this writing looks, because it's quite good. I'm actually writing the... how the hell did this play like that? Anyway, it's quite broken. It's not updated. I'm surprised it even plays anything anymore. But if you can get this, I don't know, maybe these people have, maybe I'm a bit of a thing, but the app is called Plain Text, and you can see all these files here. And these files are so many of the books that I write. I'm still, even my TEDx, both versions were written in here. Anyway, what you can do is once they're done, you can email them to yourself. It's very, very simple. It used to sync with Dropbox, but because I don't update it, I can't get it to do that anymore. Anyway, that really freaked me out. Not sure what's happening there. That was not an audiobook. I thought it was my audiobook playing, but that didn't sound like the audiobook. But it's so slow to even upload the audiobooks that I have. Like I'm trying to open the audiobook and it's still out there. It's finally there. And this is right now.
You have to purify it in several stages.
Anyway, that's weird. Anyway, strange stuff with the internet and so forth. But I sync it up, or I email myself the stuff because it used to sync with Dropbox, but it doesn't anymore. But that's just a way that I eliminate distractions. And now I'm super distracted because this thing has scared me. There's so many weird things going on. All right. Now, where were we? How do you avoid getting distracted? Well, don't show things for illustration that are going to distract you, I guess. Anyway, so it's getting hot in here. Holy cow. Let me check in with our chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And, Holy cow, there's a lot of chats here. So, Kai had said, I nailed my blinds, so my room is super dark now. Excellent. Kai says, I had an extremist Calvinist Christian brother that tried to convince me through weird arguments that his worldview was correct. Right. DSLR Dave is here saying hello. You guys are awesome. Thanks, DSLR Dave. Good to see you. Thank you for your email, too. DSLR Dave is helping out with some thumbnails recently for these videos. Anyway, Kai, I don't know what's going on with the extremist Calvinist brother, but hope that works out for you. Adolfo says he has his copy of Victorious Mind. Excellent. David has his. Excellent. Oh, sorry, Art of Memory, you mean. Great. So we can do a little bit more study. That's how we can do it. Have meetings for the for Art of Memory. Chrono Walking says, I just started Tony Buzan's speed reading. I want a chapter-by-chapter teaching. In fact, I just restarted my blog on WordPress to have another place to write. Excellent. I want to follow that blog. David says, getting the book. Can't wait for your discussion regarding it. Excellent. JL says, read Yates before I found Métivier. Cool. Chrono Walking, I already journal in a daily diary and my typewriter. I bought a ream of paper and typewriter ribbons just in case I get quarantined. I hope you don't. Kai is going to get Art of Memory. Excellent. Chrono Walking has toilet paper. Some people bought toilet paper. I bought coffee and books. Excellent. Kenji B says, I'll say on this video, but I want to say that I would love a chapter-by-chapter analysis for the Art of Memory and any links to meditation. Great, Kenji. So post over there, and I will post some links to meditation videos we have. Divya says, hi, Anthony. I am Karnataka Kannadu Nadu. I'm seeing a lot of your video because I do everyday 3-hour meditation, and his ambition is to think higher. Help me. How would you like me to help you, Divya? I'm not sure how specifically. ET asks, are we safe? Yes, we're safe. Safe, but I'm spooked. Sir Steele. Okay, so Austin says, thoughts on fear of imagination causing aphantasia. Seems to be some of this in movies, shows like Lucid or Black Mirror. Have visualization helped my mental health? Yes, visualization techniques have helped my mental health. We've talked a lot about that, Austin. Thanks for asking. And somebody else had asked earlier about visualizing without being able to see pictures in your mind. I didn't see pictures in my mind for the longest time. So I'm not sure that I actually want to. But if you want to watch Aphantasia Meow and I go through this, you can check out that video. I'm not going to look up the link, but just search my name and Aphantasia Meow, and you'll be able to find it. And we talk about how that I eventually, you should get subscribed to his channel because it's interesting what he talks about there. But you can find that you might not want to visualize more. But visualization techniques are not about seeing pictures in your mind. That's just too simple. You've got to think about it more holistically. And it's really, really important to do that. All right, so Bat Israel is studying Hebrew, but it's not lasting. Well, Hebrew is beautiful. So, if you want to make it last, I suggest you start with the free course at magneticmemorymethod.com. Get involved with memory techniques and stick with it. Anyway, what more can we say? If you want to avoid getting distracted, have your stuff shut down, and then know that sometimes it's still going to distract you, but you don't have to have all these apps on there. And even my actual iPhone, this thing is sitting here, but it's turned off. I'd have to turn it on in order for it to work. And one of the things that we've done, the only times I've had it on these live streams is when I put the telephone number up on the screen and people have called in, which is a lot of fun. And we may do that in the future. And that might be another thing that we could do in our little private thing, is actually talk on the phone and so forth. Yeah, there was a question I saw earlier about lamps. And I have done stuff with special lamps. I've had lamps that turn on in the morning to mimic the sunrise. That was useful. That was helpful. I've also, had different heat therapies for muscles in lamps, but I'm definitely not a low UV person. The thing that I just do is have computer curfew so that there is no devices after a certain hour. computer curfew has shifted over time, and sometimes I'm a little less disciplined around it as other times. But when I knew I was going to do the TED, computer curfew became very, very solid and fixed, so that when I went there, I was just sharp as possible. Noting too that travel was in the mix and so forth. Very, very, very important and powerful to do. But I don't want to give the impression that these things aren't useful, because they are. I mean, when I am scheduled to do my language practice, I just talk. I'm able to keep up my German by speaking German a couple times a week with people through this. Very simple apps that allow you to do that. Speak Chinese daily, pretty much, with my father-in-law. It's just amazing. So it's not to say that you shouldn't use the devices. It's to say that content is king, but context is God. So you've got to contextualize things. And to avoid getting distracted, you can have more than one of these things, and you can have them designed for specific purposes. And if you're going to have it online, have it in a way that when you go out, it can't be online. And just be careful of updating your software, because the one time that I updated software on this thing, it ruined so much. And I can't use Dropbox, for example. When I write, I have to email every file now individually. First world problem, right? Anyway, let's see here. I really had a lot of fun today with everybody. Links to some of the resources that we've been mentioning are down in the description below. Thanks everybody who has been ordering the preview or the pre-order copy of Victorious Mind. Really appreciate that. And thanks for everybody who has jumped on the Art of Memory video. Really appreciate that. And just thank you in general. We got more good things coming on the channel soon. Things are all a little bit hurdy-gurdy in the world. The regular schedule is a little bit, it is what it is. But keep safe, everybody. And if you would like to get the course, How to Stop Thinking, it's going to be ready in a couple of days. All you need to do is use this link, magneticmarymethod.com/VM. It should, if it's working, take you to Amazon, wherever you are in your country. Get the pre-order Kindle for the Victorious Mind. Send me the receipt. I will send you, when it's ready in a couple of days, a free course. It's a study guide that will keep you motivated, interested, doing things, little exercises, ways to think about thinking, shift how you think about thinking so that you can stop thinking. When the book comes out, you're going to have an incredible head start on the book, and then you're going to put all those practices into action. And I think you'll get to where I got much quicker than where I got to be able to just stop thinking and to do it in a way that is true to what the tradition is actually teaching. The tradition has been around for thousands of years. I didn't believe it was possible, but I managed to experience it, can experience it pretty much on demand. But that's the whole principle of the Victorious Mind, is that if you can't make it happen, you still have the resilience to deal with whatever does show up and embrace it and love it. And so very, very important. And I want to get you that additional course. There will be additional fun things for when the print and the audio comes out. So stay tuned and don't miss it. Jaideep is in the house. It's been a long time. Thank you. Listen, everybody, I know that I missed some questions. I apologize for that. But I have a meeting with a very important mnemonist in less than an hour. Need to get a break on my voice. Need to see my wife for some lunch. And meeting this mnemonist is very exciting, because that means more plans, more things for you. So if you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, hit it up now. Thank you for your support of this project. Consider becoming a channel member, even though it's not entirely clear what the channel memberships are all about. To answer Adolfo's question from earlier, to explain that, at different levels, you get different access to different things, basically. And it says what those are. I'll have to get some screenshots up to do it justice, and I need to refine it a little bit. But basically what it's going to be is that for certain levels, on the community tab, what YouTube lets you do is show certain content just to certain levels of supporters. Now, I'm not sure how much I'm going to play with this or how deep I'm going to go into it. And the reason why is I think that YouTube is great. I think we should all be supporting YouTube because this is free. It's enabling so much free content, but somebody's got to pay the bills somewhere, right? So we should never have a snotty attitude about ads or anything like that. Yeah, they suck. It's just anybody who's switched on, anybody who's awake to the way the world works is that we are thrown into this. We all got to eat. We all got to have a roof over our heads. We all got to retire one day. And we actually can make it better for everybody if we play, it's like Tony Bazan said, the rules will set you free, right? And so if we just deal with the world the way that it is, and now we've got this amazing opportunity for our conscious minds to be connected with each other in a way that was never there before, right? If we just do those things, then we're going to be able to have more of the great stuff that helps us feel better, that helps us live better, that helps us perform better, that helps us actually become the kinds of people that we want to become. And so these channel memberships, they're basically allow for those people who are supporters of that vision, and it supports YouTube too, right? They take a cut of it. And so then, and that's fine. I think that's the most amazing thing. But if you want things to come direct to me, then you need to, go direct to the website. But even then, you have to understand basic market law and market principles and all that sort of stuff. It's all distributed all around. You have no idea how much all this stuff costs on a yearly basis to do these things, to have the videos edited, to have websites, to have the people who run the website. It's just an amazing thing. So every penny actually really does count. It really does, because I want to have a second video editor, because I can do way more, way often. I want to have a content manager, because then that means I can do way more, way often. If I'm doing all these things, which I'm stubbornly doing over and over and over again without hiring people, then, it's going to be less and less, and it's going to be less of the teaching. But there could be so much more if there was more support. So that's one of the reasons why I'm testing this, because I think that this could draw so many people. So many people know this book. I love this book, so it's not like hard work or anything, and I'm torturing myself by going through it. But I want to see that you're interested in it, and the more channel memberships we get. So one of the things that we could do, and maybe I'll announce, is just have a discussion group. That discussion group is for a certain level of the memberships. Maybe I'll refine that. Then we get the telephone number up on the screen, and we could talk together on the community tab with private live streams. I don't know what's going to happen, but Adolfo asked me to pick up on that topic. I'm sort of in this kind of bind, right? Where somebody's got to be the leader, right? Somebody's got to put down the leadership sort of things. But when it comes to this, I think a little bit of leadership from you guys is well in order and well worth requesting, because this is also data science. And we got to kind of figure out, what is it that people are searching for? And then what is it that gets them to interact with those things? And how can we all get together to make something explode, because we actually all genuinely are into it? I never forget seeing Jordan Peterson live and him deciding which questions to answer based on, metrics and percentages and so forth. And part of that, I think, is just bizarre, because it's like wisdom of the crowds, and the crowds are often sorely mistaken, unfortunately. But at the same time, there's also wisdom to it. There's logic to it. So I often experiment with that, and I've experimented with it more since I saw him doing it. And I may stop. I may just go back to fundamental principles and just say, forget about all this internet vision where we might actually get a bunch of people on the same page. There might actually be support for stuff, and just go back to the more other stuff that is also fun, which is more restrictive and more yada, yada, yada. So those of you, and, we've certainly been blessed to have Elliot here, who, knows Gary Halbert. Gary Halbert would think probably I'm a moron for even doing this experiment. But at the same time, I think he'd think I was a moron for not doing the experiment. And we'll see. And so far, it's interesting. It's interesting. But at the end of the day, we need your engagement for this particular experiment to see if it's going to be done and worth doing. So go comment on that video. Let me know what you think on the video itself. And if you become a channel member, that's great. But understand that that's a kind of indirect way of supporting the project. Everybody really should have the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Here's that video for you if you want to go and clickety-click on it and get involved. But, you know, barring the Masterclass, you can also get the Victorious Mind for pre-order and that support. You know, also Amazon gets their piece of it. It's all distributed at the end of the day. And even though I'm not going to talk politically about anything whatsoever, those people who are sitting there, you know, worrying about this, that, and the other thing, about the markets and yada, 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 it's always been distributed. There's no such thing as the word that people use. It's not a singular thing. It's capitalisms, and it's not the market, but markets. And we're thrown into it. There's a certain beautiful thing to it, and whether we like it or not, if you're going to be guided by your like-dislike monster, good luck to you, because you've got to get out of your own head. You've got to be smarter than that. And that was Bruno's project at the end of the day. No matter what we discover from Francis Yates about Bruno and the art of memory, Bruno's project was that you know how to act properly in the world without judging it. That is the art of memory. It is remembering anything that you want, but never forgetting. The like-dislike monster is the enemy. To like or dislike things is the enemy. You need to be detached. You need to save your energy. Spare yourself the pain of even having thoughts about what's going on that you like or dislike. Stand outside and know that it is inside. It is you. It has to be you. Because where else in the world is the world represented except in you, in your brain chemistry? There's nothing woo-woo about this statement. There's nothing mystical about this statement. There's nothing new age about this statement. There's nothing fantastical about this statement. Everything we know about contemporary science demonstrates beyond question that there is a thing called the brain, and that brain is built from chemicals, and it is producing that sensation that you are a person who has a name, who goes about in the world doing the things that you think you want to do. And everything you see is happening inside that brain. Everything you hear is happening inside of that brain. And you need to take care of it, because you're the only one who can. No one else is going to do it. And you can use your memory to remember that one thing. Remember that this is it. This moment right now. There is no other moment. Not coming, not past, but this moment. The moment you're switched on. The moment that the little engine is burning the fuel. And it's expunging certain things while it brings new things in. Right now and no other time. So wake up and enjoy it, because now is the time. No other. One and not two is the implication of the art of memory. And your ability to remember that and to act in accordance in the highest possible way is going to be the decisive factor of how you feel 5 minutes from now, 5 weeks from now, 5 months from now, 5 decades from now, if you're so lucky to live 5 decades from now. It doesn't matter the numbers, you get the point. And as long as you are not feeling blissful each and every moment, or remembering the path back to bliss when you fall down, then you don't have the art of memory. Far from it. But you can get it. And all it takes is practice. And so, watch that video. Get the Victorious Mind so I can send you how to stop thinking. Because when you're in the now, you won't need to. Thanks, everybody. And until we have a chance to speak again, always come visit me at magneticmarymethod.com to see what's new, what's shaking. And until we speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.